Good evening, Joshua. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Now my evening is better. You can go ahead, sir.
Yes, Joshua. Listen to this. Who caused FinSac and who are the culprits? Before I go, you see this FinSac debate?
Yes, sir.
It is back on the agenda, and the PNP has placed it back on the agenda. Listen to this. Bank meltdown of the 90s in Jamaica. FinSac was the solution. Listen to this video to the end. All right. Now, the narrative there, Joshua, is that FinSac solved the problem. And if you listen to the tape a lot, I don't want to play all of it because it is so fraught with error. The suggestion is that this is the work of the Jamaica Labour Party.
I find that to be a very interesting statement in and of itself because at the time of FinSac emergence and culmination, the Jamaica Labour Party had long left office at the very minimum 7 years prior.
Well, the argument is that it was the party, JNP, that their supporters who started these banks and were lending money to their friends. That is the argument, and so the PNP came with FinSac to correct. I've never heard that.
It is a revisionist argument posited by the PNP, of course. And of course, we know that the PNP is the greatest revisionist party in all of North America. And this is not just a tongue-in-cheek statement, but it's actually a fact. The PNP, when they find that their back is against the wall, instead of admitting to either error or downright scamming, what they seek to do is to revise the argument to please themselves. And this is another case of the PNP at its nefarious best.
Yeah.
You know?
But why do you think that they are attempting to do this, Joshua, at this time? Why?
First of all, the PNP never believed that FinSac would have factored up until this point. They never believed that it would have continued to be an albatross around their neck. And because they realized that the Jamaican public are becoming more aware of their nefarious activities and their downright thievery of the 90s through FinSac, then instead of coming out right and saying, if it's even to say we made an error, and FinSac was really not an error, right? And I will come back to that. Instead of coming forward and saying, hey, we made an error, we didn't plan properly, and as such, it affected Jamaica, and we really want to, we have learned our lesson and we want to look at things differently. Similarly to what Michael Manley did in the 70s and then returned in the 90s to say if he had to do things differently, he wouldn't have taken the path he did. The PNP could simply have taken a similar, the now PNP could have simply have taken a very similar route to say, hey, that was what we did then, but if we had to do it over, that's not the route we would have taken. Instead, what they're seeking to do is to revise the argument and to put blame where it is not supposed to be and credit where it is not supposed to go. And the blame is on the Jamaica Labour Party, according to PNP, and the credit goes to them. Now,
but hold up. Don't you think, Joshua? Because a very, very important point. Because the next election is 4 years or so away. The people heading into the polls in 2030. Many of them are not aware of things.
Many of them are not aware, but I think one of the greatest mistakes that the PNP could ever make is to attempt to keep that argument on the front burner. Because if we are smart as a party and as party members, and honest Jamaicans also, we can make them pay for that because all the facts are there, all the information is available, right? And then there are some of us who just don't have to check academic material to find that, although academia is very lousy and refuse to touch it largely. But for those of us who have lived through it, we can tell exactly what the truth is, and we can present information to support the argument. For if we, there are a couple of questions that I'd like the PNP to answer, if that's where they want to go. One, if it was the Jamaica Labour Party, the first question is, when did this all begin? According to them, 1986. Okay, if it's 1986, why is it that the economy rebounded by 1988 and was growing? And even after Hurricane Gilbert in 1988, at the end of the period, up until 1988, the economy was rebounding. Secondly,
including your conversation, in your answer, Joshua, the whole matter of the power of repetition, because I heard Pelusi Perry with this, and now I hear this surrogate for the PNP. Clearly, Joshua, the PNP wants to recraft this narrative because this FinSA debacle is hurting them. Don't you think that there has to be right now a response that is more structured to rebut this argument and to keep the truth before the Jamaican people? That's not an argument that the PNP should be allowed to win.
I think it's necessary to have a, as you rightly stated, a crafted response, and not just a crafted response. I think perhaps even a press conference just dealing with just this alone,
put it to rest.
Yeah, it won't put it to rest, but at least it shows the government from a government side, and not just government, but also from a party perspective. So it should be twofold, where the party responds and the government responds, right? There should be a structured press conference frontally attacking the argument, because the PNP will not rest because they know it can hurt them, right? And it is hurting them.
Yes.
And then in addition to that, we who are in this space, we must continue to keep it on the front burner and to put the truth out there, because the PNP cannot survive the onslaught of truth if we truly put it against them. As you rightly said, that we can't just leave it because something repeated long enough becomes truth in the minds of the hearers, especially, but not just any hearers, the ignorant hearers, and it's necessary to rebut it, right, frontally, right? In addition to that, the third question I would want to ask the PNP, sir,
yes,
is that if it was the Jamaica Labour Party, in addition to the two questions and responses that I gave, that was to be blamed for it, isn't this in and of itself an affront to the PNP's argument that they are great stewards of the economy? Because if they had been in power 7 years before FinSA came into being, and it took them 7 years, one, to find out about it, and two, to, according to them, take corrective measures as it relates to it, and thirdly, the corrective measures failed dismally to the point that 44,000 registered business not only suffered, but were wiped out, right? And the economy in and of itself lost 40% of its GDP. There are so many areas that the PNP can be attacked and destroyed on this matter if they choose to want to use this, as an argument, They can easily be attacked and destroyed, and I think since they want to go there, I'm willing to challenge even Shaka Fame. By the way, for the listeners, Shaka Fame was a candidate in the parish council election for the PNP. So anything Shaka Fame says, better known as Colin Bell, should be taken with a grain of salt. He's just singing for his supper.
Yeah, but you know, he pushes this narrative and he pushes it with Ralston Hyman, and you know how that goes in Jamaica. I'm concerned, Joshua, that people need to go to the poll with information that is credible. And yes, we understand propaganda in an electoral system, but I think that this matter of FinSA, the PNP knows that it will hurt every future election campaign they have. And once it comes up, people are going to question, how could they have presided over the collapse of the financial sector. And because the economy is one of the government's strongest area, the PNP is trying to gain some ground in it. And I believe that it's an argument that needs to be dealt with pretty decisively.
It must be, sir. Absolutely must be. It cannot be left by the wayside, like a slain dog with no hope of ever coming back alive. You know, I often warn my fellow party supporters that whenever we rejoice, you know, or ignore a particular matter, especially rumors by the PNP, we do so to our own detriment. And let me tell you what I mean by this. I remember when Mark Golding just came into the PNP and everyone wrote him off thoroughly. And when I said everyone, I don't mean everyone in terms of individual persons, but largely supporters. They had all sorts of names for him. And I warned against it, vehemently warned against it. I said, stop it, because a wounded animal is far more dangerous than an animal that is not wounded, because the wounded animal is fighting for its life and it no longer plays by the rules, right? So when a soldier is slain in battle, he's not concerned about rules. And
you think Golding is wounded and is fighting from that perspective? A wounded perspective, aggressive?
He's less wounded than he was, but nonetheless, the PNP has been mortally wounded. So now it's not just
mortally wounded means that they can't come back, you know.
Well, not from that perspective, but badly wounded. Let me rephrase. Right? And as such, that is why the PNP doesn't play by the rules.
Yeah, hold on. You think they are badly wounded?
Yes. And the reason for that.
By what measure? Why would you?
Right.
Why would you?
First of all, it's historical that the PNP has lost 3 elections in a row. That in and of itself is a shock to the PNP's pride, right?
Yes.
Secondly,
and what about the fourth? You think it's likely going to be in their favor?
Elections are a snapshot in time. And so I am not one of those laborites who say four-term loading. I never
possibility though.
Right. I never take that position, right? Including when we were approaching the 3rd term and laborites were saying 3rd term loading. I never took that position, because to do that is to underestimate your opponent. And whenever you're in battle, one of the key components is never underestimate your opponent. You become lazy, you become slack, you become careless.
Yes.
Right? But when you believe that your opponent has equal chance as you do, no matter how wounded they are, then you take the necessary precautions and you plan ahead. Right? And I don't think that it's a wise strategy. You have heard me warn against it several times. It's never a wise strategy. You know, not only your opponent, but even the people in the middle. I remember the war, I think it was World War I or World War II, when France got involved, right? And there were a lot of persons who had a civilian militia that rose up and took up arms and went against Germany at the time, right? And I likened the independent voters or the middle of the road voters. Similarly, you have to be careful that you don't come off as being too self-assured, right? Because the middle of the road voters will punish you for it. It's a reality. Those who are in the middle of the road.
In other words, you must respect your enemy.
Yes, you have to treat your opponent with the greatest of respect, even if you're sure, even if you think that the battle is already in your hand. Do not take that position. It is a careless position to take.
Yeah, let me take you a little further though, just since I have you here. I don't have you here regularly. Why?
I've been pretty busy over the last few days. In fact, I went to bed after 4 last night and I was up by 7 this morning.
Okay, real. Well, let's pull you out a little bit. Let me take you to leadership and legitimacy. John Locke, John speaks of that legitimacy comes from confidence of the governed. In other words, your legitimacy as a leader is going to have to come from the people that you are governing. Now, clearly, Holness at this point is a legitimate leader. The people
Sure.
have been chosen him 3 times.
Mhm.
The reverse of that, John, is that the same people would have rejected the opposition for 3 times. Does that not make them illegitimate?
They are illegitimate, indeed. However, elections is far more than just leader centric. So
Well,
whilst
let us stay with the leader for a while. You know,
Mhm.
under Westminster, or Westminster, some people call it, especially in the United Kingdom. If you lose an election, you are likely to throw in the cup because it's a rejection of the people. Correct?
Sure.
So on September 3rd, Jamaica said to Mark Golding, we do not want you to be prime minister. Why hold on?
Because Jamaica does not operate by the same moral standard as other
But what about the
Westminster
individual?
system.
Why not say, okay, they don't. Why stand up in the parliament and say you want to be there, you're gonna stay there until the people have said we don't want you. Why
And-
go back?
And it comes back to the argument that I just posited, that Jamaica does not operate by the same moral standard as other jurisdictions that subscribe to the Westminster system, because the other Westminster system, as you have stated earlier, that when the people reject you, they feel somewhat inclined and obligated to step aside. Mark
Yes.
Golding specifically do not, and we have seen it in every area of his public life as a politician, do not subscribe to any moral standard that is good, right? Mark Golding sets one standard today, and when it's convenient, he shifts the goalposts.
The man
Mark-
of convenience.
Right. He's a man of convenience and a man of zero morality,
Is that so?
right? And ethics.
But
Mark
he was
Golding-
in parliament exposing the virtues, suggesting that the society needs to come back, and he's prepared to work with the church and civil society to lead the moral restoration of the fabric of Jamaican society. You didn't hear that?
I didn't hear that, but I'm not surprised. If we should tap into his roots as the grandson of a slave owner, and there's a reason I'm going there. Those who were former owners of people who they consider as chattel and cattle, right? When the period that was known as slavery ended, they promised them 40 acres and a mule. The people are still waiting today,
For the mule.
right? They're still waiting for their 40 acres. They're still waiting for the mule. But those who enslaved the same set of persons got money for doing wrong. Mark Golding is a beneficiary of that system. And Mark Golding, also having benefited from it, still with a lack of morality, wants to lead a nation that his grandfather enslaved our people in without feeling any form of guilt or remorse. And to show you even further, he never saw anything wrong with taking up chains and demonstrating in public that this is exactly what I want to continue to do to you. I want to continue to keep you in chains. I tried it with FinSAC and I wiped out the majority of the economy. Well, not the majority, but I wiped out 40% of the economy with my FinSAC plan, and I transferred the wealth from the poor to the rich, and I being a major beneficiary of it. And I still want to do it. Let me give you an example. Mark Golding stood in Parliament the other day, and he was talking about sugary drink, right? And I did some digging, right? Travi can verify my argument because I sent him the information 2 weeks ago, right? I did some digging. And I realized that I asked myself, why is it that he's emphasizing on water and sugary drink, right? Why is it that he didn't mention about rum and cigarettes? Lo and behold, rum which is Mark Golding's company, right? SM Jalil, which is Mark Golding's brother-in-law from Trinidad, is a manufacturer of a lot of the sweet drinks that come to Jamaica from Trinidad. Rerum is the importer of those sweet drinks that comes into the country. So Mark Golding's concern is not about the poor people, but is about how it is going to affect his profit. Huh? And when he said water, when he got up and he was concerned about water, again, it is about how it is going to affect his profit margin. It is not about ethics.
I'm taking you even further. Yeah, I'm taking you even further. Yes, yeah, I get you, Joshua. The Aristotle, Joshua, you are a man of philosophy. I can take it. Yeah, Aristotle spoke of the idea of practical wisdom. Practical wisdom. How important is tone and timing, especially in moments of national crisis, in determining whether someone is fit to lead? And the reason I asked you that question is coming out of the budget debate, the tone, the timing, not words.
The Bible puts it this way, and this is a philosophical statement by the Bible, by the way. It says, be quick to hear and slow to speak, right? The Bible says, do not answer a fool according to their folly, right? But then it tells you to answer a fool according to their folly. These are all philosophical statements. And the reason I subscribe to that, because Mark Golding operates within the same vein as the last scripture that I just mentioned, because Mark Golding doesn't seem to have a sense of timing. He doesn't know what is conciliation. He doesn't practice these things. Mark Golding is about Mark Golding and what it's it that I can gain at any point in time, to the detriment of timing, right? There's a time for politicking. The scripture says there's a time for everything under the sun. And it gives you even as far as a time for war. Mark Golding is only consumed with power. And how is it that I, Mark Golding, can benefit from it? Not the tone, not the timing, right? Not the
In other words, he lacks practical wisdom.
He lacks practical wisdom, as you kindly and rightly stated, right? You're much kinder in your wording than I would ever be, but I want to revert to my former state as opposed to trying to be harsh, right? Right.
Let me push you even a little further.
One moment, sir, if I may.
Yes.
And by this very measuring yard, it says that he would not be a good leader of a country. If you do not understand the timing, the tone and the timing, then as a leader of a country, any country, no matter how small it is, you would be unfit, you would be disqualified to lead a country.
One of the admirations I have for Bruce Golding is that Golding, when he returned to the Jamaica Labour Party, was able to expand his base. I mean, coming from the National Democratic Movement, he had a national profile. Many people admired him, and some of those principles he brought back to the Labour Party. Is it a fair question whether a leader can transition from opposition to national leadership if they struggle to expand beyond their base? Because if you listen to the opposition leader, it is focused on the 400,000, nobody else. What does it say to a leader who can't think beyond the narrow base of the political constraints?
A leader in any capacity must be able to have a global outlook on life. They must be able to see the big picture and not just the immediacy of what is before them, and also what is in their self-interest, their narrow self-interest. Mark Golding do not demonstrate these things. Mark Golding continues, as you rightly stated, about the 400,000+ and his base. Mark Golding's concern is not about Jamaica. It's about ensuring that I increase my base. Several times I've listened to his press conferences, and he finds a way to insert the information about the next election and he being prime minister, or the expansion of the base and we have gained more votes, even when the press conference has nothing to do with these things. You know, and so Mark Golding's focus is not how do we build a country, how do we ensure that the people benefit from the policies that we want to put forward, and also to seek to articulate those policies. You know, Harry says something over and over, and I find it to be a very profound statement. He says Mark Golding has gotten several layups. I don't know basketball, but I'm familiar with the term. And a thinking person would be able to simply understand what Harry is trying to put forward. That a layup really is getting, you know, that point that is needed, you know, getting that leg up, as it were, that opportunity to do right, that opportunity to get one up on your opponent, but not necessarily through nefarious means or underhanded means, but rather to come out shining as being more stately than your opponent, yes. One that demonstrates more wisdom than your opponent, one that has greater policies without actually saying it, but yes. By articulating the policy itself, as opposed to say our policy is better. Mark Golding lacks all of these things, right? And there are so much gaps. There are so much. If you take a philosophical and analytical look at Mark Golding and also a psychological profile of Mark Golding, he lacks it in every single area. Mark Golding is not fit to be a leader. Jamaica runs behind Mark Golding, and it's not Jamaica, it's the PNP runs behind Mark Golding for two reasons, and I will tell you those two reasons. One, because he's a part of the PNP, and the PNP is desperate for a win. That's one. And two, we are still in love with the Eurocentric idea of superiority, as much as we tend to be largely a black nation.
Break that down a little bit for our listeners.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Thank you, sir. I didn't. I'm sorry. I didn't realize. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. So the Eurocentric idea of superiority simply means that those who are of European descent, you know, what we call white people, we still see them as being superior to us, whether we admit it or not. That is why we bleach, because we think that, boy, if we're black, we're not comparative and we're not equal and we're not as good. And so we run behind the man who is white. I've heard PNP says Mark Golding white, him can be rich. And that is why the black man who has struggled and lifted up himself by his bootstraps, such as in the form of our prime minister, must be doing something wrong in the eyes of those who think that way.
Yes.
Right? And
listeners, could you please tap and share and repost the live, please?
Right. And this is why the PNP run behind Mark Golding like a dog is running behind its owner. Right? And I'm not calling them dogs. I want to be clear that this is not what I intended.
Yes. But you know, sir, Miss Birchall would be proud of you. She knows about similes and metaphors.
I don't want to be associated with her now because Miss Birchall.
By the way, I heard that there's a rumor that she was dating you too.
If ever I find myself thinking that way, I jump off a building back way.
You never heard that rumor?
I said if I even just hear the rumor, even if it's not true, I jump off a building back way. Huh? I could not dare, under any circumstances, find myself that level.
Well, wow. Wow. Level.
I have standards, and she don't meet it by any metric whatsoever.
Wow. Ow. My goodness.
None of the metrics that I use, she measure up to them.
Hold on for me, Joshua. Coming back. a short break for you. Please remember that if you are in Jamaica, the WhatsApp number is 876-858-9553. That's 876-858-9553. We are, of course, on the Hello Neighbor podcast, and we are streaming live on all the various social media platforms, including YouTube. I understand that my volume is a little low, but bear with me. I'm not so sure how to fix that. I have turned everything up here. I think the restriction is kind of getting us. I don't know. Maybe that's a problem. But Joshua, hello.
Oh, I'm sorry, sir. I really thought that I had unmuted myself.
If I could just shout one more question to you before I go through.
If I may, sir.
Yes, sir.
If you raised a very critical point, though, though tongue in cheek.
Yes.
That really is a very telling statement in and of itself.
Yes.
And is worthy of examination, because I've been trying to inform Jamaica, and I'm actually saddened that I was right. That Miss Birchall is not fit for political life. I didn't say it as profound as as open as I'm saying it now.
That she's not fit for political life? No,
she is not. And the reason for that, because
not fit, sir?
No, she is not fit. Remember,
but some would argue, Joshua, that the people of St. James Summit made that decision.
All right, let me tell you what I mean by that. And we can't even use that as a measuring rod of her fitness. Jamaica's gotten so low that a twice convicted drug carrier is now representing Jamaica on the political sphere. A person was charged for illegal possession of firearm, once tried to represent the PNP, and the PNP has no problem with it. Another one who an illegal firearm was found in his bathroom at his home. The PNP has no issue with it. Another one promoting scamming, the PNP has no issue with it. One who circumvented our own tax system twice, not just once, but twice, by bringing in furniture and other things. And the PNP has no issue with it, right? So what it says is that the PNP doesn't have a standard. They have a written standard, but
is it beyond the PNP though, and more? Would you not broaden that argument? Is it a PNP problem?
It is not a PNP problem, and that is why I said that earlier when I mentioned that Jamaica's morality, where it is, and the measuring rod that we use as opposed to the other countries that practice the Westminster system, it wasn't just directed at the PNP. It was directed largely at academia, civil society,
yes.
and those who support the PNP at large, because the supporters of the Labour Party tends to hold their political representative at a very high standard compared to the supporters of the PNP.
Repeat that for me, sir. Repeat that for me. Is that a observable fact?
It is an observable fact. Those who support the Jamaica Labour Party tends to hold our political representative at a much higher standard than those in the PNP. We are the first to come out swinging at our political representative and say, hey, we will not tolerate this. The PNP will make excuses as to why is it that they're doing it and pivot whenever it's convenient, just to absolve them of guilt, right? And to make it appear as if it's something else, and also to point across the fence at something, in other words, to use whataboutism, which is really to say, hey, the Jamaica Labour Party did it before, so what's wrong with that? And sometimes when it's not even related, they tend to do it. Let us give you an example. We know of the recent trial of Joyland Silvera, right? The PNP tried to equate it with Royal Reid, right? Forgetting that a life that cannot return is permanently gone. And they tried to equate it with a man who has not been charged by the courts yet. He has not had any court time. And Joylan admitted to the fact that he pulled the trigger. It doesn't get any more profound than that. And the PNP was trying to make an excuse for their own by equating it with Royal Reid. And it shows
Well, would you say an excuse for their own, or they were misled by one of their own?
It's not misleading, because even when the proof was there, initially, when the PNP realized that he was guilty, they were silent for about a week. I warned labor rights. I said, when labor rights were rejoicing, we silenced the PNP. I said, no, PNP is planning a new lie. True to form, they came out the following week. No. And that's where they pivot to trying to equate it with the Royal Reid situation, right? First of all, the Jamaica Labour Party expelled Royal Reid. Well, not expelled him, but he was expelled from it. He was removed from his position. Joylan
Yes, he was fired. He was fired.
Right, he was fired. Joylan Silvera is still a member of the PNP even after being charged and imprisoned. And
Still a member? Hold on.
Still a member of the People's National Party. Right? And they have no problem with that. Right? But if I may, sir, with the Miss Burrell situation, because Miss Burrell's situation, it speaks of a lady who is more interested in being noticed than being substantive in terms of her contribution to society and public life, right? First of all, the way she carries herself physically in terms of her dress code, going to parliament with cleavages outside. I have never seen, not even Lisa Hanna, who is known to be very much interested and to a certain degree vain, right? Not even her has done that. Miss Burchell has no problem in doing that. Miss Burchell not being comfortable with herself. We see that she had to, do surgery, to adjust her body, right? And that in addition to that, every opportunity she gets, she's very crass. She loves the mic very much.
Don't you think that is sensitive though, Joshua? Because aren't women who want to enhance themselves allowed to do that?
I am not saying that people are not allowed. The scripture says all things are lawful, but not all things are expedient.
Yes.
So not because I can do the thing, it doesn't give me the right to do it, right? I can become.
But why you say she's not suitable to be?
All right. First of all, I was listening to Karen Cross 2 nights ago, and when the Prime Minister, of course, was jiving in Parliament, and he took up the cap that he was making reference to Mark Golding with. Karen Cross says that she was actually in the gallery, and it was quite distasteful and disgraceful, where Nikisha was saying, go and give that to your wife, loudly shouting, forgetting who she was and where she was, right? In Parliament at that time.
Who was she telling to give it to your wife?
The Prime Minister.
That Miss Burchell, that is who she was shouting to give the cap to your wife?
Yes, give the cap to your wife.
Go give it to your wife?
Yes. So she doesn't know time and place, right? That is for when you're your friends on the street corner and you're with family and you're allowed to quote unquote be yourself. But there's a time and place for everything.
Miss Burchell was shouting across to the Prime Minister, telling him to go give the cap to his wife.
Go and give it to your wife, Karen Cross. The tape is there. I can send it to you because I have
the tape. I just didn't know who she was talking to. I heard her saying it, but I dealt with this on this program. I just didn't know who she was referring to. I couldn't believe that.
It was Nikisha Burchell she was referring to.
What was the Prime Minister?
Yeah, she was telling the Prime Minister, go and give it to your wife. Mark Golding, as much as we realized that he was not amused, right? To his credit, kept his composure. Miss Burchell decided on being the attack dog. Not that she is, though her behavior is not far from it.
Oh my God. Hold on, Joshua. I beg you do. Hold on for me. The moderator is going to come in. Just hold on. Go ahead.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but for the listeners who are not hearing us on TikTok, could you please go over to our YouTube page at the Hello Neighbor podcast? So you can go over to the YouTube channel and you will be hear us better. Thank you.
All right,
Thank you.
great.
Thank you.
There is almost 50 persons up on the YouTube channel. Well, I see 50. Wow, and they are having a lot of fun over there. Welcome to my friends on YouTube. Great to have you. Nice that you are checking out the program and enjoying the show. We are off script a little tonight. I should tell you, we wanted to deal with the structural turn that Jamaica has taken and look at the Prime Minister making Jamaica a viable state, and we wanted to pitch that to the people in the diaspora to tell them to plan to come back home because Jamaica is changing. But we had a little bit of technical difficulty earlier, so we have turned this into kind of an open forum tonight. And we have Harry online, we have Labby, we have Protecting. Guys, at any time you could jump in if you have anything to say. Just indicate and we'll bring you in. I'm here having a fascinating talk with my friend Joshua John, and of course he is we're moving all over in terms of the various issues of leadership, and he's telling me that Miss Nikisha Burchell is not fit to be in the parliament. Joshua?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir.
I question whether or not the people of Southern St. James would agree with you. And how would you respond to that if they should say to you, but we made that choice on September 3rd?
There's so many reasons, again, and I will posit to the point that I made earlier, is that in terms of our moral and ethical measuring rod that we use to hold our leaders, and I'm talking the PNP and academia, and civil society at large. By the way, none of them are separate, because the formation of the PNP, the Jamaica Union of Teachers, which is now the JTA, was a founding member of the PNP. So PNP is JTA and JTA is PNP, right? In the 70s, and I want to make a connection between what I'm saying because I'm leading up to something. And in the 70s, with the committee that D.K. Duncan, Ministry of Mobilization, that he led, part of what they did was to place people in the universities and teachers' colleges to carry the communist socialist message that they had at the time, right? And they still do have to a certain degree, right? And so when you hear academia being complacent in terms of chiding the PNP and holding the PNP accountable, it's not by chance, and they ensure that they replicate themselves over and over. Alona Ndombe Asamba, former Minister of Tourism, in the PNP, was very clear. She said, we are formed committee, we call them civic committees, but they are not, right? Because they have an agenda. And so it shows you why civil society, civic groups at large, the JTA and academia is always silent when it comes to holding the PNP accountable about anything, because they have sold their soul. And of course, we know that the media, by and large, has been sold out to the PNP. I remember that media party after the 2016 general election, right, that the PNP attended. Shortly after they attended it, the PNP, the media came out different, stopped holding the PNP accountable, right? And I would say that more than 80% of media is aligned to the PNP, especially the senior journalists. So when you see the PNP being able to get away with things, right, and not being held accountable, such as their leaders in the form of Nikisha Burchell, the Isaac Buchanan, the Colin Bell that is taking the government to court over the beach that the government want to make free for its citizens. The Michael Troop in Montego Bay, where that an illegal firearm was found in his bathroom. The Patrick Roberts, who was charged for illegal possession of firearm. And I can go on and on with the list of PNP. The Dennis Gordon that circumvented our own tax system in Jamaica and made the media is silent. The Alfred Dawes that was a part of the inner circle of all that took place. And all of these things. It is not by chance, because the media has sold their soul on the altar of expediency as it relates to the People's National Party. The Jamaica Labour Party supporters, on the other hand, as I've said before, keep on holding our leaders honest. So getting the majority of the vote in any constituency, and furthermore, we know that the PNP spent a lot of money in that constituency. My sister lives in that constituency, so nobody can tell me anything about that constituency. My sister is a comrade through and through. You don't get more orange than my sister, right? So I know that a lot of money was spent in that
You're
constituency.
a convert, sir? You're a convert?
Yes, sir.
You were a PNP?
Yes, sir.
What you saying to me?
I am the only Labourite in my family now.
Yes.
Right? Because I don't drink Kool-Aid. Right? No, man, you have to drink fruit juice, but Kool-Aid wrapped in your bone. Yeah?
Help me with the analogy there. I don't understand.
All right. So when we say drinking the Kool-Aid is that whenever there is a line being put forward, and you just wholeheartedly swallow the line as opposed to trying to think critically and analytically and objectively through a matter and doing your own research to ensure that the information which is presented to you is either credible or it's not credible. That's what we mean when we say we do not drink the Kool-Aid. We're not gullible people. We don't just accept something because it was said by somebody who we think is speaking the truth or because we respect them. That's what is meant by not drinking the Kool-Aid, right? So I am not one of those. So on the matter of Nikisha Burchell, when we see that kind of behavior, she's telling the Prime Minister, not respecting the office of the Prime Minister, one. Two, this was a budget debate which went beyond the realms of Jamaica alone. It's not an ordinary parliamentary sitting. We had international guests at the time seated in our parliament, and she could not understand that, listen, this is not even a regular parliamentary sitting. And she was still behaving that way. It says to you that class cannot be bought. Class cannot be bought. No amount of money can purchase you class.
And you think this classless?
I would say it 1,000 times over, sir. Unapologetically. Right? I see her wanting to equate herself with the Prime Minister about there's a rumor going around that she's the only one who's spreading that rumor that she and the Prime Minister is dating. The Prime Minister is a better man than I am in more ways than one. Right? And I wouldn't look there. And the Prime Minister is happily married, is a man in public life who has to be far more careful than I would need to be careful. You think the Prime Minister would want to lower his standard to go there?
Oh my God.
Huh?
Oh my God.
Of all the persons, look how many classy persons exist in Jamaica. Right? And if the Prime Minister was one of those, right? If peradventure, and I want to be very careful, you think the Prime Minister would want to lower his standard and his international public, well-honed reputation by seeking to go, as Karen Cross, not I, called her a mattress?
Oh my God. That's a little hard, though. That is a little.
I said Karen. I said,
Okay, yeah,
I said Karen Cross.
Yeah.
I said Karen Cross.
yeah.
Said it.
Uh-huh.
You know, and she, you know, it's sad because you don't have to behave that way to be noticed.
Yes.
You know, there are other ways to be noticed. You know, just simply be someone who people can look up to and say, boy, this is a trying girl who come from humble beginnings and she has worked very hard to build herself. That's
Joshua,
all you need to do. Yes,
if I may join the conversation at this point, it has nothing to do with her. It had nothing to do with her.
Mhm.
She was just sent out there to do something,
Mhm.
and she did very well what she was sent by the pimps to do. She's being pimped by the pimp leaders, political pimp leaders in our country. She was sent out there after the Prime Minister came off his presentation, and it was a damn good presentation. She was sent out there to distract and to detour the conversations surrounding the government have this thing covered. Notice what we're discussing days later. We're discussing Miss Falls everything instead of the continuation of a discussion about what Mr. presented. And she was sent by the two pimps that lead the party to do that. Politics is about perception too, you know. There's a lot of tactics.
Let's kind of move on though, just because I want to get back to what I wanted to talk about. The whole the bigger idea, the bigger idea of where we are today. Are you there? Are you there, Lavi?
Hey, neighbor.
Yes. Are you there, Harry?
I'm right here.
Yes. Harry, are you there? Okay.
Here, neighbor.
Fantastic. And we have protected. All right. Let's look at the subject we have on the agenda. The structural term. Andrew Holness and making. All right. Yeah. Just close your microphone when you're not speaking. That will control the noise here. Sorry, the making of a viable Jamaican state. Let me start with you, Harry. Let me start with you. Harry, are you there?
Yes, neighbor.
Okay. Would you describe the okay. Let's give Harry a little bit more time. Lavi, are you ready for me?
Yes, neighbor.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Before you, I'm sorry that you're moving away from that topic because I wanted to make a public service announcement.
Well, what is it?
The question. I wanted to come clean and let the country know that. Have you ever heard of a woman, Diana Fox Carney, the wife of the Prime Minister of Canada?
No.
Well, it is rumored that I'm dating her.
You are dating the Prime Minister's Carney's wife, sir?
I said it's a rumor. You haven't heard it?
No, I didn't hear it at all. Prime Minister Carney's wife?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh my God.
So, neighbor, I guess what you're saying that if the rumor is true, no, if that rumor is false, then the other one is also false.
Anyway, let's move on to bigger things, Mr. Neighbor.
Yeah. What someone raised with me earlier, Lavi, that Jamaica has never had a sustained period of stability, and that even during this time of 10 years under Holness, going into 11, he has had to deal with a pandemic and several natural disasters. In terms of where we are as a society, Lavish, how do we place those two catastrophes in the context of where we are as a measurement and where we could have been? Let's say we never had those two events. Where do you see Jamaica today?
If we didn't have which two?
COVID and Melissa.
Oh my God. Wow, that's a very good question, you know, neighbor. If we didn't have those two setbacks, wow, it's really hard to imagine. And when I say hard to imagine, it's because I have no doubt that without those two things, Jamaica would have been such a different place today. Because the government has demonstrated that it is on a mission. It is on a mission to deliver to Jamaica. It is not on a mission to deliver to one side of Jamaica. It is on a mission to address every situation in our country that we do not desire to have or desire to be a part of our country. But the entrance of these crises, I would say, given the leader that we have, I don't think I want to look at them as setbacks. I think I want to look at them as the impetus, as the litmus test to prove to the government itself that it has the ability to do the things that they really would have done if we didn't have those crises. And coming out of these crises, the government is confident in itself because it stood shoulder to shoulder with the rest of the world and took Jamaica out of a pandemic, looking good compared to bigger countries with better resources, both human and otherwise. And it is testament to the leadership and the chemistry of the leadership that we have in the government that we have. So in as much as I would like to wonder where we would have been without the crisis, neighbor, because I see that the leader who we have right now seems to be a man who is made of crisis. Every crisis that he has had, it has transformed him into a better version of himself. Every obstacle that has been thrown at him, he has converted them to stepping stone. And as he steps on those stones, metaphorically, he is taking Jamaica up, up, up. Jamaica has not slid backward, you know. Here we are in a crisis of a hurricane with 56% of our economy affected. And it's as if nothing happened. Yes, the signs are there of the ravage of the hurricane that passed. Yes, people are putting their lives back together. But the people who are putting their lives back together are not a hopeless people. It's a people who believe in the government that they have elected. Listen, I hear people talking about Golden and the PMP and the budget presentation. What I saw in the parliament and since the hurricane is that the reason why the PMP has not been able to mount a program to counter the government is because the PMP themselves realize that the government is a government that is tested and they themselves believe in that government. Do you not notice that after the hurricane, all you hear Golding was saying was agitating to get himself among the decision makers? He wanted to be a part of it. He wanted to be a part of the government, a part of success, because in his mind, he knew as a person that the government has demonstrated its ability to overcome crisis. And he wanted to be a part of it. He wanted to look like a leader. He wanted to look like a prime minister in waiting coming out of the election. He wanted that. He wanted the status. He wanted the attention. And all you see is tantrum that he is pitching in the parliament during the budget presentation. He's upset because he didn't get the opportunity to do the things that he wanted to do. He wanted to ride on the prize of the prime minister. The prime minister who he does not respect. The prime minister who he does not like, but he admire and envy the position that he's in. The prime minister who every chance he gets, he try to put him down. What you're seeing there is a PNP B-rate leader leading the B team of the PNP. These people who I see sitting over there, they would just have made it to the position of councillor if they were a part of the PNP of the 70s or of the 90s.
Uh-huh.
They cannot mount any kind of fight to the JLP. And so when you put all of that together and look at where the country, the trajectory of the country, the plans that are laid out, there's absolutely no doubt that when this chapter of Jamaica history is written, Andrew Michael Holness will be crowned the builder of the new and modern Jamaica. He will go down on history as being the father of the modern Jamaica, no doubt.
Yeah, Harry, let me hear your take on that question. As a matter of fact, my moderator called me today to discuss notes and contents, and she suggested to me that Jamaica should be looked at in the context of the disasters that we have had to suffer. I heard Dr. King, moderator, earlier speaking about this very thing, that you wake up one morning and 54% of your productive activity has just disappeared. Harry, position Jamaica in the context of that. What do you think we would have looked like today without COVID and without them? What type of budget, for example, do you think we would have had to do? We would have at the past?
Well, to be blatantly honest, neighbor, I'll load that question a little bit more to say, including the aggression of paying down the debt by the government, and I position it that way because when we take it into consideration, currently the debt is around $2.2 trillion. We would have seen a significant decrease in it, as well as you see all these infrastructures that we're seeing, all these opportunities would have been done at least 5 years earlier. And here's why I say this.
Wow.
With all of these things coming together, and I'm not saying they would have been done all together, because none of them were ever done together. But what we would have seen is people being empowered a lot more. How people would be empowered, people may ask. You see, just like how we went a decade without any new taxes, you see, within that time frame, we also got the threshold to be increased, and that put back purchasing power in people's pockets. Think about it this way. Those persons who have great business ideas would have actually taken the calculative risk as an entrepreneur to do so. It is highly possible that those businesses would have also flourished, because of course we know most businesses, neighbor, that passes 5 years survives. It's just the nature of that. But with the environment being more suited and to foster this type of growth, innate growth, we would have seen people, the average man, having a significant, in terms of standard of living, being higher. We were here complaining, and I hear people complain about minimum wage. That would have hit 32,000 a long time ago. And then it wouldn't have been an argument. We couldn't have been here having it as a topical issue, right? What would have also happened is that when we take into consideration where we are, and chiming in with what Dr. King said, it is inevitable, based on our geographical location, that we will face natural systems. There's nothing else, sure, more than that we will be getting some form of thing. Also, we're in a globalized economy, which means that we're all interlinked and interdependent at some level, which means if we have any trade issues, if we have any geopolitical issues, such as what we're seeing with the war, that will have an impact. But Jamaica would have been in a more robust position in a less burdened, and I'm speaking for the people, they'll be in a less burdened situation that they're now looking to say the standard of living is lower. That neighbor would have also sent a message to our democratic process. And here's why. It might have had a change in our political perspective. And what I mean by that is the opposition would either had to be changing by now to meet the demands and standard of the people, or faced being obsolete for a great time. Because with these events that would have slowed us down significantly, both in terms of naturally and medically, I want to put for COVID, they slowed us down. They actually inhibited our economy to move at all, apart from Melissa that wiped out 56%, as we know now. But to put it into perspective is that people have more money in their pockets, neighbor. People will also be demanding a higher standard from our government. People will also be able to be better equipped to these natural systems that will come. And I can't stress that enough. In fact, those failed systems and frameworks that Melissa has highlighted significantly in the West, and I'm going to speak predominantly on the West, because they're the ones who would have gotten hit the most, right? Lovey, hold on. Yeah. So they would have faced the disaster, the greatest. Neighbor, that would have possibly be a political carnage for the opposition, because those persons would have actually been advanced to a greater level, right? Of course, when we're looking at the whole crime issue, we wouldn't have been waiting until 2025 to see us far below 700. As the JCF have road to 400, we might have hit that already. We would have saved precious lives, valuable lives, because remember, our biggest resource in Jamaica is our human resources. And every life saved is a potential addition to our productivity and our production, as well as to our innovation that this country needs to move forward, right? So a lot of these things would have happened over time. This roadmap that the Prime Minister would have laid out a few days ago, right? We would have been extremely close to completion of that. Now, we're not saying everything would have gone smoothly, but I can definitely go out on a limb and say we wouldn't have been having certain conversations that we're having now. In fact, the opposition would have probably been fearing the worst, neighbor, right? Because if we roll it back to 2007, and I'm laying this at the feet of Jamaicans in how I put it forward, had there been continuity after the election, 2011-2012 election, had there been continuity, neighbor, we would have seen probably an even greater development structure. We would have also seen a greater advancement for each and every person. Don't to Miss Mavis Opamoko and John Brown on one part. They themselves, neighbor, would have been a lot more equipped. I hear them complaining in terms of our health sector. We would have been able to construct more health centers. We would have been able to revamp a lot more hospitals, neighbor, because these are critical institutions to how a country is run, right? Now, these things, neighbor, yes, we would still have some complaints, but the complaints wouldn't have been what we're thinking of. They're speaking in terms of the whole brain drain. That is an issue that would have been, I don't want to say 100% addressed, but it would have been one on the table to be addressed. And we would have been in the process to also ensure that we fill these gaps, right? So a lot of these things overall would have happened despite the fact that we would still have somewhat these systems that may come and they will continue to come, neighbor. But it wouldn't have been in a state now where for years, we've always been vulnerable, neighbor. What we would have been looking at is to say resilience in the eye of these systems. Not in terms of to say we are reactive. Jamaica would have been in a proactive state. Now, would we still need to probably do some things differently? Of course. We'd still have to lean on the people of Jamaica. But I can tell you that in that time, with the continuity, we would have seen a lot more things achieved a lot sooner. We would have been in a better fiscal position, would have also been in a better connectivity and infrastructure-wise. And here's one of the major things, neighbor. We would have been in a greater networking globally. And why I say that is, I hear people bashing, say, oh, we need to diversify in terms of the sectors that we depend on. We depend on those sectors because we have the comparative advantage throughout the region. We're still the most demanded product when it comes down to tourism in the region, right? And also to a great extent in the world. No, it's not that we're heavily dependent on it. But you see things like the STEM, neighbor, science, technology, engineering, and math, those would have been onboarded in our educational system at least a decade ago.
Why is it that these type of discussions are lost in media, in media and online? I mean, is it that they don't have a Carolines?
Well, let me put it this way, anyone, to be frank. The systems of communication and the institutions that fall within the system were already manipulated and have an align or rather have pledged allegiance to a political party. So it was highly political. It wasn't anything about national pride. It wasn't anything about the best for the people. And here's why I say this, neighbor. And I can quote Andre Hartner, who ran against Malahoo Ford some time ago, in a video on a podcast that he did actually, to say that he was in a forum to speak freely, right? And the moment he did so, that freedom of speech was nullified. He was taken out of the meeting because him speaking the truth was not in alignment with the party, right? So he didn't take the political stance.
People's National Party.
That's the People's National Party. And they themselves ensured that they muzzled it.
What Andre said?
Yeah, but I'll send the video. But for him, when he spoke the truth, because he thinks that this is an area that we're looking to advance Jamaica and help Jamaica, and it's a forum that we can speak freely and say what it is, how we see it. But the People's National Party stance was not that. It was to protect the People's National Party in that very forum, which means you have to, even if you don't agree, you have to take the political stance at the detriment, and this is me adding this one, at the detriment of the people of Jamaica. And I can back that by saying this. The fact that you would have taken a moral stance, an economical stance, and a stance that would advance Jamaica, the moment you go against that, you're now doing something at the detriment or taking advantage of the people of Jamaica, right? And that was exactly what came out of it, right? Now, when you have communicators that are well aligned, they shape the narrative, they shape and ensure to state what is put out. And these aren't conversations they want to put out. I hear George Davis spoke and this was profound. Why is it that academia, you know, the lecturers, the doctors and so on, they never ever speak about these issues? Never ever. We will never see them do it. And when you're in that position, neighbor, it is your responsibility to shape society because you're at the helm of it. And by the sworn of your role, neighbor, if you're a lecturer, you don't control your perspective and nullify it and keep it into one space, which is a lecture room. It is your duty bound as well to ensure that you expand the conversation outside of those four walls of a lecture room. But you don't see that because they either aligned or are very fearful of speaking out because now their jobs may be on the line. They may be shunned professionally, right? And as such, these are the things that the system of these institutions bind them by. So even though you want to speak the truth, you're afraid to come out and have honest conversations that will advance the thinking, the perspective of Jamaicans. And we saw it. I went to UN Neighbor, and I know the agendas that are pushed by a lot of lecturers. They're very much infiltrated in the system. And as such, they don't speak out against anything from the opposition at the time they were the government, when those persons were placed there, right? You don't have a lot of honest conversations, specifically when it comes on to economy, finance, when you look at political systems, governance. You will never ever get an honest conversation that lays it out on the table from these people. The very few that may attempt it will do so in secret, and as such will be anonymous, and it's not a lot of them, right? And you as that student have to be smart enough to navigate the information that is given, because here's the thing that can't be hidden, neighbor. You see, once you get the raw context as to what is taught, you can look through the examples that they give you, because the strength is in the example that they coin. But once you can get the basics as to what is being, for example, economy, you think in terms of any economy students that's listening here, I can guarantee you that they have never heard in a lecture room about the FinSAC. They have to do that by themselves. They have to make sense of that by themselves. And something like that, neighbor, should be the forefront of a discussion because it hurt a nation. It should be a case study throughout the Caribbean, and definitely one you have to put under the microscopic lens locally. And that doesn't make it to a lecture room. And that is strategically done. So we'll never have these honest conversations until two things happen. Those that are before us that were tasked by that system is no longer in existence, and or we find a way to reshape the system by removing them and let them live in honest conversation. Because once you're able to hold them, isolate and hold them accountable, then we'll be able to have a chance of having these conversations. But they'll never make it to the forefront. And I can tell you this, neighbor, this is why this program is getting one of the hardest fight you'll ever see locally.
Why this is what
because
needs a program for itself? Why?
Well, the thing about it, neighbor, is because we aren't playing by the same rules of these institutions that are systematically put in place, then we will face different type of trials, tribulations. So far, we're tested and proven true, right? And I strongly believe we will.
Okay, this idea though that the struggle is from within meaning like-minded labor. You think so?
Well, that is a great part of it, neighbor. In terms of, this is at a period where people are, well, let me reshape it and say this. The environment is being created for conversations like this, for people who are bold and brave enough to have them, for people who would have sat by the side and collate as much data, and I'm going to say data instead of information, because when it leaves from our lips, that's when it becomes information, because we make sense of it and give our listeners. Everything that is there is just data, and we put meaning to it, right? And these are the things that our listeners come night after night to hear us break down, to hear us make sense of it so it's applicable to their lives, so they can also make sense of their lived experiences. Because I can tell you, a lot of people who went through FinSAC and the generation after FinSAC couldn't put together an understanding as to why their lives were the way it was. Scratchy the other night put it well. He said the system, in terms of that, failed him, right? And that was one of the major things that contributed to it. Now, Scratchy got older, and he's now able to make sense of it as to why it was the way it was. There are many persons out there who didn't have, and this might sound away, but I want to put it, say, didn't have that luxury to understand it in its totality. And as such, they're benefiting from conversations like this, hard conversations, because it doesn't take anybody to be bold, brave, and convincing enough to keep doing it day after day, night after night, right? And this is not one to say we have an agenda per se, but if persons want to say we have an agenda, yes. My agenda is to ensure that Jamaica and the generation after me is better than I was, intellectually. And anything I can do fiscally and infrastructure-wise, definitely. But it starts from having honest conversations, leave people to make sense of their own lives through these difficult conversations, right? Now, you will always have people coming along to try to rewrite history. Let's say history is written by the victor, right? I think maybe that's why the opposition is having a hard time. No. But the truth is, once you're able to have the honest conversation, and this is something we want from both political parties, not just one. Yes, one will feel the pain more than the other, because they failed Jamaica time and time again. And I'd want to say outright that they did it to favor themselves at every single chance they got. And as such, they want to speaking of the People's National Party, right? Because they benefited from these ills of the economy, of poor governance. They benefited, neighbor.
So
You
it was
think
in the interest of the PNP for the economy to fail, to collapse, to go through that period of underdevelopment?
To enrich themselves as much as possible, because understand this in a neighbor. For example, in war, somebody has to benefit,
Yes.
And doesn't matter what the war is, somebody always benefit. And if you're the one, and these aren't mistakes, because here's the thing, you can't do the same thing over and over and expect a different result. And this is me trying to find a reason for the opposition, right? If you continue to do the same thing over and over and expect a different result, that's insanity by definition. So it simply means if that was the case, then we had some insane people leading our country for far too long.
They're mad.
Or outright neighbor. Or the alternative is you were never, ever equipped to handle the people's business. And the people's business is proper governance, right? So that's two. Is either you were out of your mind, need psychiatric evaluation, right across the board, and I'll not take that back, right? Or you were not equipped. And the third one, neighbor, is you saw loopholes to line your pockets and to be the benefactors, or rather the beneficiaries on the backs of Jamaicans. And my stance on those three, neighbor, it was a combination of all three. And that is a hill I am willing to stand on forever. Because understand this, You will have people who are insane because you have to be crazy to try some of the things they did, neighbor. You have to be crazy to buy into a lot of the things as well, right? It benefited them, which goes to the third one. And then, of course, it has been proven that they didn't have the capacity and the capabilities of leading the country where it should have gone. Those are facts. And I can put it to anybody who wants to challenge it. Feel free to do so. Because that is what it is. When we put everything under the microscopic lens, you will get that result. And you can't complain about it. You can't debunk it. And you definitely can't say it's a lie. Because everything right there, you can find enough evidence to convict members of the government at that time for 1, 2, or all 3 of those reasons. And that is fact.
Or you're delivering power punches tonight. Hold on there for me, son. My goodness, your parents must be proud of you. Wow. Are your parents alive, sir?
Yes, neighbor.
They should be very proud of you. You're a gift to this program and to this country. Hello there, Protecting Jamaica. Let me come to you. Hello, sir.
Good evening, neighbor. And I apologize for earlier when I chimed in without saying good night to the listeners, the panelists, and yourself and Caroline. Good evening.
Good evening to you. The finance minister of Protecting Jamaica made a claim that the PNP cannot manage a modern economy based on their recent presentations. Would you want to help our listeners to understand why the finance minister is making that claim? And is that claim that you agree with?
The finance minister is within her right with the support, the aid of history, recorded information.
Define for our listeners a modern economy.
A modern economy is an economy that will bring into focus, sharp focus to the ICT segment of an economy. So the modern economy is a computerized economy. It's industrialization that is driven by the Internet of Things. It is totally ICT. Now, the PMP could not operate an analog economy. I mean, that PJ Patterson take out some money out of the pockets of the Jamaican people or the purse of the Jamaican people to finance the reggae boys going to the World Cup for the first time. And then go buy a ball and left in France. Mark Golding pass $40 bottle of water and go buy $200 bottle of water and then a complain say water there than gas. So the choices of the People's National Party with the Jamaican economy, and those are just 2 examples of many. So the choices that the People's National Party have always made as it relates to the Jamaican economy have been choices that really make no sense.
So what the finance
choices
is that over the last decade, the structural reforms, the modernization of the economy, the PNP is not able to navigate that. They can't manage.
Right. They are not able to. And when she was pulling apart their presentation, it showed every number that she put forward showed that the numbers that the opposition was trying to put forward did not make sense. Because in one instant, the opposition said that there can be tighter measures in tax collection that will yield more money, so the government wouldn't have to ask for new taxes. And then in another paragraph, the same opposition say the government can borrow 19 billion. Forward was coherently presented to the people of Jamaica. As a matter of fact, I don't think that they even sat down and really thought about what it is that they really wanted to put forward to the Jamaican people. And we noticed for the past 10 years, neighbor, that it has been so easy, as long as you're a thinking person. And we have been blessed with a government where the ministers of finance from Ardisha come right up to now, anti-favor, are people who really understand what they're doing. There's one public commentator who said, I think it was Cliff Hughes, that the Jamaica Labour Party is always blessed with people who understand money, financing, and economics. And that is something very important compared to the People's National Party, who always believe that the easiest way to go is to borrow some money and run deficits, rack up the debt, and then continue to pile on taxes. And Nigel Clark showed us an example of what 17 years of PNP's taxation looks like. And it's not that taxes were being asked of the Jamaican people, but it's that the economy wasn't expanding to broaden the tax base. And I hear the same PNP complaining now that the tax base needs to be broader. Yet still, it is showing that the tax base has expanded maybe about 15 to about 22% in the last 10 years.
So then, what the finance minister very measured is saying is that the airplane that you used to fly on in the 60s, that pilot can't fly the one where they make today.
No. It is not within their nature, neighbor. The PNP is about distribution of wealth. They are never about the creation of wealth.
And that reformist philosophy cannot survive in the modern context of an economy that has to be built on pillars of structural fiscal discipline.
But it couldn't survive in the olden days economy either. So we're talking about the modern economy now. But if we were to really analyze the People's National Party and their stewardship of the economy, what they practice couldn't even stand up to the scrutiny of the old economy. It couldn't.
And you're saying to me that they wouldn't have learned any lesson and would have applied these same old principles in this modern economy?
Neighbor, the PNP are only interested in power. They aren't interested in learning. They aren't interested in the evolution of things. They aren't interested in themselves evolving. The world is changing. The world is moving on, but they still continue. All right, look at it. The politics that the PNP started practicing in the latter part of the 60s come right up to the 90s. They still want to practice it now, which is bullyism. The difference now, neighbor, is that we aren't afraid anymore. Labor rights used to be afraid, neighbor. If you have an all-one green brief, you're afraid that the PNP are going to look through all your pants and see it, because they have special eyes. So you're going to take it off, neighbor. You used to be so afraid. What they're meeting up on now with the bullyism and all that they have always practiced is that we are not afraid. So it is the same PNP practicing the same old things, but they expect the results to be different. No, they are not interested in even sitting down in opposition, having not carried the burden and the weight of the country for the past 10 years. They are not, they don't have the responsibility of carrying the country through a COVID, a once in a generation pandemic. They don't have the burden of carrying the country through a hurricane burial. They don't have the burden of carrying through tropical storm Raphael or now a 174 years phenomena, Hurricane Melissa, a category 6 hurricane. They don't have that burden. So what they should have been using their time to do, sit down and as a team sensibly look at where Jamaica is going, and just like any runner in a relay, you wait till the button come in your zone, which is an election period, and then you put your best effort forward after now the button will be offered for grabs. You put your best effort forward, staying in your lane. making sure that your foot not touch the line and just get yourself prepared to run your mile or your quarter mile. They can't even do that in opposition because they are not concerned about getting Jamaica to proceed and to progress in any sensible way. They just want to come and get access to the purse. Now look at it, neighbor. The Bank of Jamaica by law is now independent. And the PMP are talking about
Taking a billion.
calling up and taking $1 billion out of Bank of Jamaica. What kind of nonsense is that?
Yes. Absolutely correct. Absolutely correct, sir. Yeah. Hello? He's muted. Don't mute, brother. Hello? Okay.
Yes, neighbor. I'm here, neighbor.
You should, yeah. Let me put something to you, protect you. Caroline's argument is that we have not had any steady period of time where the policies and programs and aspirations of the government is allowed to flow. Now, this takes us beyond politics right now, particularly, is that Jamaica should not risk interrupting the process of structural reform before it fully matures. Wouldn't you agree that this where we are today requires a certain level of continuity for the interest of the country, and that this is not a political statement?
No, but it is a political statement. You see, once we're talking about policy, once we're talking about a democracy, it will always be politics. And I already shared with you guys here that I'm not in the business of having no discussion and talking about whichever statement is not a political. Every statement is a political statement once we're discussing a democracy. No. The context for a conversation like this can be made broader. We're 64 this year, but we're still a very young democracy. And sometimes I think that we're very harsh on ourselves when we compare ourselves with the likes of a United States, which is about 240, 250 years old. And then we compare ourselves with England, which is about over 1,000 years old. And when we do that, I believe that we're missing something very important from the conversation.
I don't want to disrupt you, but the Labour Party in the last election said, choose Jamaica. Choose Jamaica. They didn't say choose in terms of framing the argument to the people of Jamaica. Isn't it correct to look at Jamaica needs structural stability? We can't afford any disruption.
And I'm going there. I heard your question, and I'm going there. I just wanted to lay the foundation in a broader context that, so considering these larger economies and which are democracies, which we compare ourselves with sometimes, if we are to consider our very own situation at home, then we will have to look at it in a broader lens. And one important thing to consider is the maturity of the people who will have to choose the Jamaica. And a matter of fact, choose Jamaica is still a political statement, so we can't escape the politics. It's just a political strategy to have a broader reach because there are those in the middle, So it's just, again, strategy and context. So the maturity of our people is significant. Now, the People's National Party of the two major political parties in Jamaica have spent the longest period of time in power in Jamaica.
It's very narrow. Very narrow.
And what? Pardon me?
It's very narrow.
Yes. Now, the point I'm making with this extended period of time that the PNP have spent in power is that they have matured the society to attain to poverty. So maturity don't just happen in one direction, You can become hardened as a criminal.
Yes.
You know, so social maturity can swing either way. They have matured, they have fermented the society to accept poverty. And so we're seeing flip side of that today.
Hold on.
Where
Let me just clear. So you are saying that the 18 and a half continuous years of PNP mismanagement created a culture in Jamaica that is part of the challenge now to get
yes,
move
right.
society away from that. That's what you said.
Right. So the flip side of it now is an effort to pull Jamaica in the opposite direction from that. And that is the reason why it was very significant to establish from poverty to prosperity. So basically, you're creating a new kind of thinking in the people's mind now to get to the point where you want me to get to know. It is going to take an extended period of time with the Jamaica Labour Party in power to have this kind of social shift, this kind of mental shift. It is an evolution, but not an evolution that just happens by the snap of your finger or the squinting of the eye. It is an evolution that is going to take an extended period of time for people's minds to gradually evolve. How will this happen? It will continue to happen as we're seeing it happening before our eyes, with the government producing results,
Yes.
which will be the opposite of what pertain
Yes.
that the people have gotten used to.
Yes.
And so as we move forward and as we continue to give this group of people who are now governing Jamaica a longer time at the helm, we will over time realize that yes, the society has evolved. Our people are more aware and prepared to move to this new, we talk about the new Jamaica. The new Jamaica just basically means that the evolution of our society is happening, moving from poverty to prosperity, in simple terms. Now, because of this hemorrhaging of sense and common sense that the PNP presided over for 19 years, conversations like these, neighbor, people like yourself, Harry, myself, Scratchy, Caroline, Joshua, connecting, we have a significant role to play in this regard, because we will have to continue to have these discussions to situate in the people's minds the importance of these things that are happening, helping them to understand that yes, economy can yam. So on a broader scale, we need to give the government the time to remain in power to continue these changes.
And that is why I'm asking you, why not try and frame it as an independent thought, as a nationalist thought, as a patriotic thought?
Because
like,
we do not have the social maturity for that. Remember, the society is already splitting us. Even those who stand in the middle, understand the society to be JLP and PNP. And that is the reason why any other third party from Bruce Gold in NDM that have risen up have never really gone anywhere.
And will never happen in Jamaica, sir. Will never happen.
Right. And what that is saying to you, that even though there are some who will not readily put on a green or orange shirt and go jump on a motorcade of either party, their understanding of the politics is JLP and PNP. So because we do not have that kind of social maturity, you still have to frame the conversation in a way that shows the contrast between the two.
Yes.
Because at the end of the day, if they really get inclined to go vote, they will be voting for one of the two.
Yes.
If we had a large kind of, if we had a society with a large base of socially mature people, those who stand in the middle, it would have been easier to establish such an argument. You call it, in more established democracies, they refer to it as the coalitions. They establish different pacts and different coalitions, especially in American politics, which I've participated in for quite some years. supporting the election of the members in the state that I live of the Democratic Party. And what you find is that they establish these PACs because there are different groupings in the society that have different interests, different situations that they need to be addressed, different issues that arise from time to time. Now, in a society like these that are already established democracies, that can happen because you have over many decades it took them, but they have managed to have a society established with a certain level of social maturity that they can do this. Our society, we will have to continue for another 2 or 3 terms with the Jamaica Labour Party in power to change the total landscape of Jamaica. And then the case will be easier to be made. Like the 4th term will be easier than even the 2nd, much less the 3rd. Because now that these things will come alive, then people will begin now to connect with the reality of what they're seeing, understanding that it is no more about pipeline and talking and promising. Things are literally being done. And so the more you do that, is the more people now will remove that lock and that block from their mind to listen and to begin to try to understand. Nowadays, if you stop 3 people on the road, 2 of them might tell them, I'm not interested in politics, I don't hear nothing. And so you have to continue to do this work. It is heavy lifting, it is hard work, but as you continue the journey, it gets easier and easier. And it has to be that you have tangibles to show the people. You have to produce, put things in front of them, like the dam over in a Spanish Town where the dam they don't build and the water is improved in St. Catherine and Kingston. Then people will say, well, we can't say nothing a long time, water no cut off. When the new JPS licenses negotiated and we have better service, then people will begin to say, okay, these are the people who do this. And that is the reason why I say PNP is so bitter. And they're trying to use bullyism to overthrow the government in every sphere, every direction them take. Because they know that once these things are done, then the minds of the Jamaican people will begin to turn. And the social maturity of the Jamaican people will begin to take shape. And they cannot survive in a socially mature society. The politics that they practice is not socially mature. If you understand what I'm saying.
I do. Hold on to me, please, sir. Joshua?
Sure.
I don't know if you want to double down on that, but I'm going to put something to you. You can pick up from protecting if you care. But let's say we continue this structural path and we do not have a disruption. We don't turn back this time, because you would agree with me, Joshua, that since independence we have taken 2 steps forward and we have taken 2 steps backward. We have had crises. We have had to dig ourselves out. We were strapped with debt, not to mention natural disasters, which we have no control over. But let's say we continue on this path. You're a prophet in your own right, Joshua. Show me what Jamaica would look like in another 10 years. Let's say the Labour Party was to get another 2 terms. Envision for me, what would that look like for our people?
All right. So I like to, as you know, I have a saying that says the past informs the present.
Yes, sir.
Or history informs the present. Jamaica's political history has been one of ebbs and flows between the Jamaica Labour Party and the People's National Party. We saw under Jamaica's first minister, Bustamante, Jamaica start to grow, right? And when we got to the 60s, under Bustamante, we saw the building out of 344 schools in order to change our education results. Then coming the PNP in the 70s, 1972, we saw not only a stoppage, but a rapid decline and a wiping out of our GDP, our economy at large. Then coming Edward Philip George Seaga, and we saw a return. Well, we saw stability first and then a return to growth. Then the PNP came in power in the 90s, and we saw not only a stopping, but a total reversal and a wrecking of the economy. Then Bruce Golding came in, and we saw stabilization again, returning, and then growth. And under the fiscal responsibility framework, we saw systems being put in place to ensure that we never return to that careless way of managing our economy and handling money as it relates to our country. Then came the PNP. Portia did much better than the rest of them. They were forced based on the framework that was set up by Bruce Golding to continue along the process. Albeit they were not just by Bruce Golding, but the IMF was here. Basically, our country was seconded to the IMF for 4.5 years. Then came Andrew Holness, and we saw not just focused management of the economy, but a clear plan to move us forward into the future, right? But not before we move forward, we saw a clear plan to stabilize our economy, induce growth, and then to change from where we are. During the process, we have had 3 major catastrophes. We have had the corona, we have had Beryl, which was not as catastrophic as this, and now we have Melissa wiping out 41% of our GDP. The only thing that came close to that was the PNP's ravages of the 1990s, i.e. 1996, masterminded by Mark Golding and Omar Davis. Now, to answer your question as it relates to that specific question.
And I thank you for that piece of history, Joshua, because that is the type of information that I think young people need to understand. And these are facts, Joshua, that under the 2 periods of PNP management, the Jamaican economy really suffered.
Yes.
Those were very bad periods of
yes.
And that Siaga got a very bad economy in the 1980s and really had to restructure it. And that restructuring caused some pain. Yes, that's part of it now.
And you're right, sir. In fact, the record has shown that the PNP the JLP has always done excellently well with the economy, and the PNP conversely done terribly bad with the economy.
It is the first time in our history that the Jamaica Labour Party is getting this long a run in government, correct?
It is the very first time, and the only other period that we have ever seen this continuous period of growth in terms of length was in the 60s when we bested the world in terms of 18.3%, which is just one and a half.
I'm talking about years in government. This is the longest the Labour Party has spent in government.
Right. But I'm making a connection between the longest run here and the results of the long run, and also the results that we got by getting 2 consecutive terms before. Right. So I am now pivoting to there in order to move forward to the next 2 terms that you're suggesting, and asking the question, what if we should get it? Based on our past record. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
No, you are on the right track. Go right.
So based on our track record, it shows that the Jamaica Labour Party not only look at transitionary leadership over the years, right? When we looked at Bustamante being there, he mentored Hugh Shearer, he mentored Edward Philip George Siaga at the same time. When we looked at Philip George Siaga being there, he mentored Bruce Golding, right? When we looked at Bruce Golding being there, while he was there, Edward Siaga was mentoring Andrew Holness, and then Bruce Golding also recommended Andrew Holness, right? So we see a clear succession planning being put in place. So the plans that we have is not just about JLP. It is not just about following a particular model per se, even though the model works. It's about ensuring that what we have is fit for purpose and fit for the time that it's being implemented in. It's not about having a permanent ideology that is not workable for a particular time. It's ensuring that we have a more global outlook, and ensuring that the skill sets that was possessed by one individual is now transferred through mentorship through the successor, right? So we see clear elements of it, not as clear now, but it's indicative through what we see taking place with our current Prime Minister and another 10 years under the JLP's leadership. Considering the vision outline, especially in this budget presentation by our Prime Minister, and not just the vision outline, but based on performance under this Prime Minister. We have seen how COVID was managed and the quick recovery, not just in terms of from the illness itself or from the ravages of the illness, but the economic recovery. We have seen the bounce back, the quick bounce back under Beryl, and we're now seeing the same thing, the clear plan, that was put in place to ensure that we recover as quickly as possible. Tourism sector plans were put in place to ensure that, boy, we didn't just wait and twiddle our thumbs and to say, boy, wait until it comes. No, clear plans. The loan to JPS was one such clear plan to ensure that businesses that needed electricity and IT could work, right? Because if JPS is down, then what it means therefore is that the businesses are going to suffer. And from the micro business to the large businesses are going to suffer without electricity. And so it was necessary that the government gave the loan of the $150 million to JPS so that we could move ahead. Marketing for tourism, not only began, but the government gave some money to the tourism sector. I think it was 33 something billion, if I'm not mistaken. Don't quote me on that exact figure, but a certain amount was given to tourism to ensure that the tourism sector could bounce back up. At any rate, we tax tourism a lot. So if it is given back for the greater good of the economy, why not? PATH beneficiaries were also given money so that they could spend back into the economy to get it going. We saw the loaning of the generators to some small businesses in the community. We saw the Solidarity program being re-implemented so that small businesses could get up and going. So it shows a visionary type of leadership under the Jamaica Labour Party, and in particular under this leader. So another 10 years under the Jamaica Labour Party, coupled with what we have seen, plus what we have heard, especially in the last budget presentation, in terms of the grasp of what is required to move the economy forward, hearing from the finance minister also, and rubbishing other alternative suggestion. It shows that they have a clear grasp of what is required to move the economy forward. And I see Jamaica in the next 10 years under the leadership of the JLP getting closer to first world status. In fact, I will tell you even better. When this Prime Minister took over, apart from the crime which was an albatross around our neck, which we're fully aware of, apart from the declining health sector, which was in shambles under the PNP, the police that was totally ravaged in terms of vehicle and training and equipment, you name it, right? The bus system and all of those things, right? We saw this government taking clear, concise, unambiguous steps to ensure that these things were corrected and laying the foundation for people to begin to feel comfortable in not only reinvesting in the economy, because if you have crime out of hand, people will not feel comfortable in investing their hard-earned resources or even borrowed resources into an economy. If your health sector is in shambles, then your human capital will not be available. And so it's going to affect your investment as a person. If they don't have transportation, then people can't get to work. And so it was necessary that the government address these things. And when you have a prime minister who is leading from the front at all times, and with even the advent and the creation of NARA to ensure that the building out of infrastructure, to ensure that our linking services and travel across the island in terms of carrying goods across the island and ensuring that people get from point A to point B quickly, right? What it means is that the economy is going to take off. When this prime minister took over, we were considered third world. Now we are considered an emerging economy. That is how they refer to us now, a developing state. So if we move from a third world to a developing state, another 10 years. And if we did this in the first 10 years, when we were debt-riddled and debt-saddled, then another 10 years is going to see us squarely in the forefront of a first world economy. You know, things won't be perfect, but we will be there, because we are at a point where the climate change and all of those things. But this government has always planned ahead, and that is key for any leaders. For any leader to understand that you must always project, you must always plan for the future, and once you do that, then you're very well prepared for any eventuality that comes forward. And Jamaica is safe in the hand of the JLP.
Okay, I'm going to go to protecting, and then I'm going to go to Harry, and then I'm going to do a little round table. So I'm going to just throw some questions, and you all get a shot at it. How that's so? All right.
That's good.
Protecting, connecting. Sorry. Yes.
I think you're mixing up protecting and connecting. Sorry.
Yes. So connecting.
Good evening, everybody.
Yeah. You may want to connect all of this for us, sir.
Yes.
Where there are dots, you could connect them. Let me ask you something. Democracy gave the PNP 18 and a half years. Whatever you want to say about how they won those elections, the democracy prevailed. Democracy gave the PNP 18 and a half years. Do you suspect, connecting, that the same democracy will give the Labour Party 20 years?
Highly likely. That as a matter of fact, the third term victory has set up the Jamaica Labour Party for 3 and 4 and 5 and 6. Because
no. What were the democratic fundamentals at play? Why the PNP got 4 consecutive terms?
Well, I don't necessarily agree with you that it was a democratic process, you know.
No, and I added that, but I don't want us to move away from.
I used to pad ballot box. I mean, you know where democracy there.
Well, you know, yeah, but still. It is what we have respected.
Yes, well, it's a difficult question, because I honestly don't agree that it was the democratic process that allowed them to get 4 terms straight.
Elections in Jamaica are freer now than they were.
A lot freer now, yes.
Yeah, but still, the malignant influence of money is still driving elections in Jamaica. Okay,
and that is one-sided, you know.
Well. We can pick that up. What I'm putting to you is, do you feel that the process of democracy in Jamaica is so mature that it understands the structural path, the fiscal stability path, the fact that we can't risk going back and starting this over again? In other words, we have invested too much. Do you think that the process will keep the Jamaica Labour Party in power for at least another 2 terms?
Absolutely, and the die is already cast in that third term victory. But let us not forget, you know, let us keep this at the forefront of our minds. Jamaica is at risk so long as you have a PNP. So long as there's a PNP who's trying to get back in power, and they will do any and everything and rule out nothing to get back in power. Neighbor, have you heard about the Pickers Guild Committee?
Yes, sir.
You heard about the Pickers Guild Committee? And what was the purpose of it?
You bet I have, of course.
Yes. So even now that even the fact that the JLP is in power for 10 going in this 11th year, the Pickers Guild Committee is still at work, where they established from in the 1970s. And that's why I know the PNP has not changed. The Pickers Guild Committee firmly established that only PNP operatives should work in the public sector. And right now, even after 10 years of JLP reign, the public sector is still crammed up with elements of PNP supporters. And they are not there with good intentions, they're there with bad intentions. That's what we learned from the former ambassador.
Yeah, and you have been around for so many years.
For a long time.
This country connected. Isn't it true, sir, that I have not seen in my lifetime any sustained period of stability in this country? Never, you know. I mean, we're almost, we go forward, then we pull back. Isn't this the best period of stability where you can really see that the country is moving in the right direction? Why would we want to disrupt this for anything at all?
I agree that this period is the absolute best period since independence. In fact, that period between 1962 and 1972 was very outstanding as well. And as I'm protecting Jay alluded to it before, that we had growth, or it was Joshua, we had growth of up to 18.3% in 1 year, 11%, 8%, 5%. That was the type of growth that we were experiencing, and the people squandered that in 1972 and gave Michael Mann a landslide victory. But one of the things that I am seeing now, though, neighbor, the people are evolving. The voters are more alert. They are thinkers, and they have more information. And the social media platforms, the proliferation of social media platforms is a nightmare to the PNP, because people are now getting real-time information, factual information. That wasn't the case before with traditional media. You understand? So we are in a better place now to guide and to assist persons to make informed and more intelligent decisions. One of my disappointments, though, Niba, is that the intelligentsia, by and large, may not be participating in the middle and upper class, may not be participating in the electoral process. And that concerns me. I don't think it has to do with the fact that they are turned off of the process. It's just that they are in their gated communities and they are in their iron vehicles, and they wind up at the stoplight when they see the windscreen wiper man coming to wipe the vehicle. And so we need to take responsibility for our country. A lot of them do not even understand the difference between the PNP, the marked difference between the JLP and the PNP. A lot of Jamaicans, including educated Jamaicans, don't understand that. They really don't. And the PNP tends to capitalize on that and mislead the people with lies. Yes, I saw them went after the PM in the last election, and he's in that only survived, but he triumphed with that place in New Kingston there. They went after his credibility, but he rose above that and won the election. As regards the assertion that Joshua made about the analogous thinking of the PNP, neighbor, we just have to listen to the PNP, to understand where their mindset are.
You say analogous, sir?
Oh yes. Oh yes.
Tell us what that word means. Tell us what the word means.
Jump on. I need to move on to something else, neighbor.
No man. I just want the listeners not to be lost. You so it's not digital. You have analog.
We talk about analog. It's coming from analog.
Right. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yeah, yes, man. Another thing that I want to speak to very quickly is that the PNP spoke about we love the poor. I want the people to understand, including the poor, that they should replace the word they. We love the poor, but we love you poor. And they love you poor because they want to control you. They want to control your mind. And because when you give a poor person, a person who doesn't have anything, when you give them a 2 pound of rice and a tin of mackerel, it's the best thing since size we're doing for them. But that is not helping them, and the poor people don't even understand that. This government not only love the poor, but they look out for the poor, and they do things that benefit the poor. We are at a stage now where we should understand that the ideology and the philosophy of the PNP has not changed over the last 60 plus years since independence. It has not changed. The same PNP that it was trying to mislead Jamaica in 1965 when the government launched NIS, and they spun it around, called it SIN, and told the people that it was syntax. is the same PNP came back in 2025 to tell them about the old bus and what it was going to do to the students. Anything that is good for the people, the PNP will go there and demonstrate on Blackwood and try to deprive the people of it. You understand? So they have the same kind of thinking. And one of our presenter, Harry Enriquez, I call him HH. I mean, I agree with you that his mother must be very, and his family must be very proud of him.
Yes.
Yes, man. He really dived into what the PNP stand for and what we really should be doing at the stage. Dr. Andrew Wallace explained to us in clear and unequivocal terms in his last budget presentation what the course that is being charted by his government. And I think he did very well in explaining to everybody, including the common man, where he's taking the country. But this thing cannot happen overnight. We need to understand that. If you wreck the place in 19 years straight, it's not going to take 10 or 15 years to fix it back. But we have to look at the clear path that is being charted to take us into that first world country status. We have to be patient, and we have to give them the time to do the things and watch them, hold the fire to their feet. Don't just sit back as we did with the PNP in those 19 years. Hold the fire to the feet of the government, even if you voted for them. I am one person who will not sit down and allow this government that I supported to run with it and to do the same thing that the PNP did in this 1970s between 1989 and 2007. And I tell you something, I agree that it was really the IMF that held the fire to the feet of that government between 2012 January and February 2016. And they never had any wiggle room to go outside of what the IMF conditionalities stipulated. And so I agree that that government is the best of all the PNP government. Although I wouldn't say they were outstanding.
Thank you so much, sir.
You're most welcome to that.
A lot of people are.
Yes, man, no problem. You want me to come down? I can sit in the back.
No, you can stay right where you are. I just
all right, sir, no problem. I'll be right here.
To give the listeners a little update on what's happening in champs on the boys' side. After 14 of 42 scored events, Jamaica College 119 points, Kingston College 68 points, Calabar 65.5 points, St. Diego, we're talking about the boys championships, St. Diego on 41, Wolmer's boys 30, Excelsior High School 25, Monroe College 22, St. Elizabeth Technical 18, Edwin Allen High School 14, and William Knibb 12. Those are the point standings so far after 14 of 42 scored events at the National Boys Athletic Championship going on right now at the National Stadium. Again, Jamaica College 119 points, Kingston College 68, Calabar 65, St. Diego 41, Wolmer's Boy 30, rounding out the top 5. Now on to the girls. The girls is a ding-dong battle. After 15 of 46 scored events, Edwin Allen is out front with 94.5 points. Heidel is second with 60 points. Homewood Technical is third with 57 points. Immaculate Conception is on 52, followed by Covenant of Mercy Academy. They're on 30.5. St. Diego, well, they're on 29. Clarendon College, they're on 27. Alfonso Davis High School, that's the former Spalding's High, they're on 23 points. Excelsior High School is 22.5. Wolmer's Girls, 19. Rounding out the top 10. So again, on the girls' side, Edwin Allen, Heidel, and Homewood, in that order, top 3. The girls and boys championships is on now at the National Stadium. Stay tuned to this program here. We give you hourly update going forward. As we get the updates, we bring them into you. You don't need to break and go watch Champs. Stay with us and we'll bring you the latest updates coming out of Champs so far. So Edwin Allen, they are on top, way ahead as a matter of fact. And Jamaica College at this time seem to be running away with the championships. Wow. I think my friends online are getting all excited. Harry Henriquez, good evening to you again, sir.
Good evening, neighbor.
Things are working out on your end.
Neighbor, I tell you now, one about the little dark horse in Immaculate Conception High.
Let's get back to the show, Harry. At the heart of all of what we're talking about, Harry, is leadership. The leadership of Andrew Michael Holness. Tell me, Harry, what would
Yes. Go ahead, neighbor.
How would you describe his role in this process? You've spoken in time past about the team that he has been able to put together. But his leadership, managerial, architectural, what type of leadership how would you describe Holness's leadership? And let me just expand the question a bit more. Having taken Jamaica from the menu, place it at the table, having to deal with Jamaica's debt crisis, the COVID crisis, and now Melissa, and to have kept the country stable, does speak volume to the type of leadership that we have, Harry.
It definitely does, neighbor, to one of the highest level. Because when you look at it, neighbor, I'll put it down to maybe 2 simple things and things that we may overlook. He's a good manager and a good coach. And normally we use those words interchangeably, but not in this case. Because what happens is that he has shown that he's good at putting a team together, handling the skill sets of each individually without doing it in terms of micromanaging people. And that is key, because what micromanagement does is that you're technically over the backs of the persons, watching every little thing they do, and you don't normally get the best out of anybody. When as a manager you do that, because it is restrictive. It doesn't give areas for exploration and to be innovative. But what we've seen with Mr. Holness is that he's been good enough to manage the strength and the weaknesses within his entire team, the entire administration. We've seen it, neighbor, where persons may have made some mistakes and they were moved. For example, Floyd Green shuffled around, right? We saw where Christopher Tufton was not always at Minister of Health. And as such, he would have moved around these persons based on their strengths, their capabilities, and their capacity to do so, right? Because you can have the capability, neighbor, to do something, but not in the capacity aspect of it to execute. And he has been good. He has actually had a good eye to handling those issues, which is never easy, right? But that has accounted for the macro part of the team, things that we see and say, okay, you can leave Jamaica and, different persons will still function effortlessly. But it also comes down now to neighbor where he's showing good coaching.
Yes, sir.
And what coaching does is that he can pull a member from his cabinet to speak with, to let them hone their craft. He also has an eye in terms of scouting properly, because that still falls under coaching, to pick different persons from different areas. It is not buck-ups, as Jamaica would say, neighbor, why we've seen for the first time the private sector this integrated in everything government does. They have a seat at the table.
You remember the period of the 90s, sir? The private sector was basically at odds with the government. Very critical in some instances too.
Of course, neighbor. Right? And a lot of things in even in the early 2000s, when policies were being, put forward and so on, the private sector suffered. They were stifled because they weren't at the table in the current capacity that they ought to, right? And a government cannot drive an economy by itself. It will never ever happen, because there are things in which private sectors and other sectors bring to the table that the government cannot do in its capacity, right? Now, when you look at it, neighbor, he has been able to do that. I mean, we've seen Keith Duncan, which persons may say controversially, is in Senate based on family lines, right? We've seen Nigel Clark coming out of a person who would be coming out of nowhere. We've seen Audrey Marks, extremely great when it comes on to her work and her contribution to Jamaica outside of the quote-unquote political arena. He's been able to bring these people and not let them just be palatable in politics, but to also let the people embrace them. Because back in the days, neighbor, you will never ever find the people of Jamaica readily accepting, I want to say, technocrats, because it was still a situation of us versus them. We still would have seen them in terms of these persons coming in as the rich, the powerful. They don't want the best for us. They can't understand the little man on the corner. But that is not the reality. We're seeing these persons being embraced. And as such, how Mr. Holness goes about it is that he lets them take accountability. He gives them the room they need. He has also ensured that he empowers the individuals to go ahead and input a piece of them. Because what that does, right, is you are now dealing with a human being. And as such, your instructions and your strategies should not ever be robotic. So that what I'm saying is you can't keep on telling people what to do. You create the environment for them to go ahead and explore it, for them to put a little piece of them, because what that does is they now have that pride in everything they do. They will now go ahead and put their best foot no matter what. Because why? They see any action taken as a part of them, as a representation of them, and then also as a national of Jamaica. And that pushes everything together. And that is something Andrew Holness would have been able to do better than almost any other prime minister in this magnitude. And it is no fluke as to why we're getting the results from that administration as we're getting now. Because let's not fool ourselves, neighbor. Mr. Holness has several key characteristics that every and any good leader should have. And I'm not speaking charismatic as manly and so on. I'm speaking of integrity and trustworthiness. I hear Mr. Perry speak of Mark Golding being the integrity boss. I think the originator of the word might sue him to mislead and use that adjective for somebody who doesn't embody it, right? But it is acting ethically in the times when nobody's watching, when you're not put under the microscopic lens, Mr. Holness has been able to embody that holistically. He's a clear communicator. We saw that on exhibition, neighbor, last Thursday, right? We saw how he laid out the roadmap to the people of Jamaica to inspire, to motivate, and to bring hope with understanding to the average man, right? A visionary. He laid out the plan. While it is not just him alone, he's able to see further down the path while taking on the dreams and aspirations of Jamaicans. Because here's the tricky part about that, neighbor. If you don't have that characteristic within you, you run the risk of a burnout and failing the people that you so desire to help. So you have to be visionary in how you think. Hence why he's able to empower these persons a lot through his coaching skills. And I lead it back to his years in teaching, neighbor, that he would have been able to pick up on a lot of these things, a lot of skill sets over time. Because once you're in that area, there are just some things you pick up automatically because it's not just functional. It is one in which drives productivity in oneself and also strategic. Now, when we look at resilience, which is the next characteristic, and adaptability, neighbor, we saw how well he was able to adapt. When Mrs. Simpson Miller said, call it, Andrew, call it, and youthful exuberance got the best of him, neighbor, and he lost that election. He now had to wheel and come again. He had to adapt to the situation of his political career as a leader, and also as party leader, and also as a potential leader for the country. So he had to position himself in a way to handle that hurt. And we've seen him adapt to situations, no matter what it is. How to handle COVID, how now to handle the risk management for Melissa, how to know also handle the fiscal constraints of the economy as the leader and also as a CARICOM leader to neighbor. So it is not easy.
Keep your people relatively happy, sir. Amazing stuff.
Exactly. To keep that stress test to as minimal as possible. Yes, right? Because that is critical. Yes, now, sir. When you look at adaptability, this is one of the most complex geopolitical times probably in history because so much is happening. Yeah. And he's been able, neighbor, I want to say, to tap into his Italian skill sets because they're very good dancers. Yes, neighbor, they're very good dancers, man. And as such, he's able to do this delicate dance in a very complex and complicated geopolitical arena without putting his people in the line of fire, without being impulsive, and also without being arrogant. Because it's easy to be arrogant when you have a decade of leadership in a country, when you've now almost revolutionized and transformed a nation. It is a thin line, and he's been right. And of course, resilience. Now, the major thing, neighbor, is that humility, and it's something we don't see from the opposition, which is what lets Mr. Holness be exemplified even higher, to be put on a pedestal by the Jamaican people. Because I'm not just speaking in terms of the persons who are politically aligned strongly, right? He's able to know and admit when mistakes are made or when there are shortcomings. And we've had several shortcomings, neighbor, naturally because of a pandemic and also the worst natural disaster in 174 years in the Atlantic. That is natural. It is not somebody who looks to brush it off, to sweep it under the carpet. And it's definitely not somebody who wants to go ahead and mislead the people by using terminology such as negative growth. You don't get that from him. And as such, regardless of the response, he's he has a humility to recognize whatever his team has contributed, and also to let the people of Jamaica know that, listen, we may have not hit the goals we've set that we're on track for, but that doesn't mean we were derailed. And these are the things that exemplifies him, that put him in a box by himself in terms of available leadership right now. Right? And that is something I think the opposition has to contend with, sadly for them, unfortunately. But he's now the standard that Jamaican people are looking to, and they will not accept anything less. And as such, when you're up against somebody like that neighbor, he also no longer needs to be actively scouting, right? He's now attracting, because when you do these things, your results speak for itself. You know, you've now become the team that people want to be a part of. It is just like sports neighbor, right? You have, let's for example, Real Madrid, one of the biggest clubs in the world. Real Madrid have had the results under their belt, the titles. And as such, if you ask any upcoming footballer which set of clubs they would want to play for, Real Madrid is probably at the top of the list. Not because they may have an exceptional coach, no, but because they know what is embedded under specific leadership. And in that case, Mr. Holness represents just that. You want to be a part of the best if you also want to be the best. And as such, he has now been able, over the last decade, through actions taken, for people to want to be a part and to be associated with him, neighbor, right? Mia Mottley, for example, it wasn't just that she came here in Jamaica to help us with any relief. It was also to show strength and to be associated with a mover and shaker in the political space, right? The G20, they didn't invite Mia Mottley by herself. Jamaica was invited, right? And when we delayed, they sent another invitation because they wanted Mr. Holness to be there. And as such, you will find people wanting to be associated with you because you are the winning team. And that speaks volumes to how well he manages, he coaches, and handles the affairs of the people of Jamaica.
Fantastic. Lavi, your take on that?
Yes, neighbor, I'm here, sir.
Yeah, man. Did you hear the question?
It was about the leadership of the Prime Minister.
Well, his role in this structural reform that Jamaica has been enjoying, the stability, and of course the whole matter of the crises that we have had to go through and keeping the country. He's the man at the wheel, because if things were bad, he would have gotten the blame. Shouldn't he get the credit, sir?
The Prime Minister deserves every credit that he gets. And not only has he been a transformative leader at this particular point of our country, not only is he fathering the emergence of a modern Jamaica, and he's also fathering the emergence of a political awareness, and he is stimulating the minds of the Jamaicans, in the sense that there's a group of Jamaicans who are gonna turn out to be the Prime Minister's insurance policy. What do I mean by that? Sometimes we worry about the PMP's threat of rising from the ashes. But here's one insurance that the Prime Minister has. There's a generation of Jamaicans who experienced the 90s as children and teenagers who have emerged to a Jamaica now that they have become some of the most ambitious Jamaicans that we have ever had. And they are set on becoming prosperous. They want to have their own homes. They want to have the best cars. They want to be able to take their family on vacations. They want to be able to enjoy Jamaica. They want to be able to drive from one parish to the next good spot, whatever. All those things, they want that. And they want to do that in an environment that has very little crime as possible. And these Jamaicans are not going to be distracted by the dangling, glittery image of the People's National Party. They are set on making sure they know where their bread is butter. And they see the Jamaica Labour Party as that political party. And they have seen the Jamaica Labour Party like that because of Andrew Holness, because of the way that he has been able to change the politics. He's a game changer. He has changed the way we do politics in Jamaica. He has changed the way we do he has changed our governance philosophy. He has changed the mindset of Jamaicans right across the board. He has changed the standard of performance, and now the Jamaican society is addicted to a level of performance, and they will not accept anything less than they have been getting. And that is why the response to the tax measure that just came out was such a tame one. He has also changed expectations of Jamaicans from being just...
Too, you know, how people trust your leadership.
Exactly.
Yes.
But importantly, he has changed the expectations of Jamaicans from being just accidental benefactors of government policies, but to be the sole reason for which governments seek to have positive outcome. So now we are not just there, you know, picking up the crumbs, but at the center of the policies of this government, led by Dr. Andrew Holness, people are beginning to realize that they are at the center of what government is doing. It's not by accident that people are having improvement in their circumstances. It's not by accident that even those on the political opposite of the government are having the most prosperous times that they could ever have. It is not by accident. And he has been a model of self-control, vision, and leadership. And this is making it so difficult for anyone to really credibly affect him in any way. It doesn't matter the accusations that are coming from his opponent. I think that the Jamaicans who I spoke of, who have become ambitious, who miss out on the 90s, who are able to go to heart and be certified in a profession and is able to start their business, that cohort of Jamaica will never be deceived by anything that anybody is going to tell them. They are always going to see that the government has good policies. And a government that has good policies will always have the opportunity to lead the people who are benefiting from those policies. And this Prime Minister has raised the level so high that it is going to take a level of complacency and carelessness on the part of the government that would stop them from having the time at the crease to pile up the runs more and more. And I hear you asking a particular question, and I think that what you are seeking to bring out is as if we should be institutionalizing the stability that we now have in a way that future elections will preserve it. But
Yes,
because
sir.
those things cannot be legislated in a democracy, it is the political arm of the government that has to now bring
political education, sir.
exactly to bring the people along with you, just as how we started out last year by saying choose Jamaica. The theme for the next phase, the next election, has to be along those lines.
Agree.
To
Absolutely.
with Jamaica being in the middle of it, because we can't do it through legislation, but
In
we
other
can
words,
do
the
it
next
through.
the next election really is not about change. It's about
No.
whether Jamaica continues on the same trajectory.
Yes, it's sticking with Jamaica. You know, support. You know, so it has to be along that line that the party itself, the government itself, is not inviting people to become JLP. No, invite people to become. Yes, come invite people to become proxies of stewards of their own destiny. Then the politics is secondary to that. It is the national interest, the national thrust, the national unity of Jamaicans coming together around a government and a program, not around a party. And that is why the people who support the Jamaican Labour Party, the reason why they are different from the people, the JLP supporters hold the government accountable. They are not cultic in their approach. They hold the government accountable.
Yeah, very good. Okay, protecting.
Yes, neighbor, I'm here.
Yeah, pick that up for me. The next election, not about any change. It's about Jamaica continuing on the same trajectory. What we are arguing for is that the path that we are on must not be changed. We must ensure, as citizens of Jamaica, that this time we get this thing right.
Yes, neighbor, and importantly so. But as Connecting said earlier, and I think Lavi alluded to it, even Harry mentioned some aspect of it. The PMP are not known as a group that just lay down and die. They are always active and they always seek to find a way to railroad and detour. And they're going to be up to their shenanigans as we head into 2030. Nothing will change.
But did you see a difference in the budget debate? Where clearly the government won the debate, not only on substance, but in the minds of Jamaicans, they wanted no interruption to the trajectory that they are on. Didn't you pick that up coming out of the budget debate?
Yes. And I mean, as those of us who are here who know the PMP very well, always remind you folks in the neighbor. The PMP can't help themselves, you know. Now, on the basis of the substance of the debate that should have been shared across the board. Because you have a people who are ill prepared for anything substantial, anything with purpose, anything meaningful. They are ill prepared, neighbor, and they have always been, and are not new, and are just yesterday or today or last week. The level that the politics is elevated to in the past 10 years, the PMP are ill prepared to practice this kind of politics. And so, if you listen to their discussions, there's no substance. It doesn't matter what topic, what issue they're speaking on. There is no substance that comes out of the PMP. And so this can also be a tactic and a strategy, you know, neighbor. Continue to elevate the conversation and you will continue to lose the PMP. And then in real time out in the open, you literally will expose them and the people will see them. What this is going to do is either going to force them to take practical steps to really start paying attention and become more purposeful, meaningful, and substantial, or the government is going to continue to practice this and push them into a corner. Their base is already dwindling. They only consider the politics. They will continue to message to the base or what is left of it. And so over time, as we get those in the middle to begin to participate on the basis of the issues at hand and the substance that the government will be putting forward, then the government will grow its support nationally and the government remains in power. The PMP really not paying attention, they're not learning, neighbor, and they're not changing.
Okay, all right. Want to thank you, therefore, for tonight, sir. Very well done.
Most welcome, sir. Good night to you and the Neighborites family, Caroline, Harry, connecting. Good night, my friends.
Joshua.
Yes, sir.
Yes, you're going to come in now for your last ball, Joshua. How do we craft this as a message towards Joshua, that this structural path that we are on cannot be changed, Joshua. The government need more time. Jamaica need more time. We have to settle down and really build this out. And how do we preserve this, Joshua, beyond even leadership change at every level? Because as you alluded earlier, Jamaica will remain a competitive democracy. The PNP is not a dead party. They have support in Jamaica and they will challenge at the next election. So the political education is very important, Joshua.
Most certainly, sir. You began the program by asking the very critical question about leadership. And in order for us to keep it in the forefront of the minds of the voting public and Jamaicans at large, it's demanded and required of a good leader. Not just somebody who leads people, because there's a difference between people who leads people and a leader. Leading people, sometimes you're thrust there by default, but it doesn't mean that you're able to lead them because you don't possess the qualities of what a leader is or who a leader is. But a good leader has a few qualities that we must look at.
Yes.
He must first and foremost be visionary. So in other words, he must be able to see beyond the now. He must be able to see beyond himself. And he must be able to see beyond that which he's a part of. He must be able to see beyond the now, beyond himself, and that which he's a part of. And look at the bigger picture. What is best for the future as well as the now, but you have to start with the now. Where are we now? What is it that is required to take us forward, and how do we strategize for that? That is what visionary leadership does. The second thing is that a leader must have good judgment. He must be a judge of character. He must be a judge of people and, by extension, talents. And he must be able to measure himself also. So in other words, he holds himself accountable. And it takes me into the third one, because accountability is a critical part of leadership. When you're able to critically hold yourself accountable and not pat yourself on the back for the good that you have done. Yes, you must be able to sit back and say, yes, I have met my objectives, I've met my goals, but that shouldn't be enough. You should be able to look objectively to say, where can I improve? And if you have done wrong or you have missed the mark, to be able to look at it and say, I didn't achieve my objectives. I didn't do as well in this area as I had planned to, right? And even if you have done as good as you initially planned to, you must also ask yourself, could it have been done better? And it informs your planning going forward, right? The fourth element of a good leader is that he's a transitionary manager. Now, that may seem like a very big term of reference, right? But what is transitionary management? Transitionary management means that he's going to plan beyond himself. Because no matter how successful you are, no matter how good the previous qualities you possess, you are not immortal. And so you have to begin to plan. Once I have demitted the scene, whether it be through retirement, whether it be that the breath has left my body, or whether it is that I have moved on to something else, who do I groom for the journey ahead, right? Or what if people are dissatisfied with me? The team that I lead is dissatisfied with me. How do I prepare my successor that there's not a gap within? Because a transitionary manager is one that is able to replicate not only himself, but to ensure that the person coming after him runs the race just as vigorously or better than themselves. So the Bible says that everything produces after its own kind. Mangoes do not produce breadfruit, right? You may find a mango tree bearing sweeter mango than the crop before, but it must produce after its own kind. So if you're a successful leader, you must be able, as a good leader, to replicate yourself by pouring in your information into others. We saw it with Elijah and Elisha. A double portion of Elisha's spirit was in Elisha because he trained Elisha well, right? And really, it speaks of the mettle of the man. Last but not least, the coaching and an eye for talent, right? You must have an eye for talent to determine of the people who are around you, or even those who are not immediately around you. You are constantly looking out for new persons to fill areas, because just like how you are not immortal, others are not immortal. And you have to understand that you may need to move someone to another area, or people may move on to what they consider to be greener pastures, or sometimes the breath of life just leave persons. And so having an eye for talent, you must be able to look out and see where can I place persons and better use them. We can use them in a better way than the way we are using them, or their talent can serve us in this area, right? And so this is part of leadership, and that's where you began since night. So why is this important? Because for the Jamaican people to buy into why the Jamaica Labour Party is the best option and must remain there, right? Because we must get them to understand that the Jamaica Labour Party is the only option for the country. Now, I know that may seem harsh, but if you have an option that is not equal or less than the one that is competing for your role, then the other one is really not an option. They are vying for your position, but they are not an option. And so we have to help people to understand that if the other option can only talk, but they have not demonstrably proven themselves to be equal or better. When we look at their track record, the decisions that they have made have been flawed. They are not very measured in the way they approach. And that's another characteristic of a good leader. You must be measured, right? You must know, you must be situational also. And so these are some of the things, right? And our leader currently has demonstrated all of these, and he's the only option at this particular point in time. The Jamaica Labour Party is the only option at this point in time in our history that can take us forward. We have seen how they manage crises, and even areas that are not crises but were critical in need of attention. The police force was one, the health sector was one, our debt management, we have seen that. The growth of the economy, we have seen that, right? Our international representation in terms of when we go to the UN and the respective committees that this administration have been invited to sit on. We have seen how Dr. Nigel Clark has been invited to sit on the IMF. We have seen Mrs. Holness, how she was invited to sit on the parliamentary committees. We have seen Sharon Hale Webster, who is a part of the party, who works at head office, was invited to sit elsewhere. And we have seen many others Kamina Johnson-Smith, Young Samuda, Ed Bartlett. These are all persons who were invited to sit on international committees. It is not by chance. These are committees that understand that they want the best minds possible to be a part of what they do. People don't just pick people because they like you. They pick you because they think you are a proven performer. And not just think, but you have demonstrated your ability to lead effectively. Jamaica Labour Party and this administration has demonstrated that unequivocally and unambiguously. And so I say to Jamaica that whatever you do, do not make the mistake. This is the best team right now. No other team can match up to us. Do not listen to the rhetoric. Do not listen to the lies. Do not listen to the misleading information. Think about the future of your children. Think about the future of Jamaica. Think about your retirement, right? And the reason I said think about your retirement, because if you dare make a blunder and did what you did at the end of the 60s, going into the 70s, and wipe out our economies, and it was repeated again at the end of the 80s, going into the 90s, and wipe out our economy under the PNP again, right? Then your retirement may not be as safe. And for the young persons, though you may not have gotten to the point of retirement, you want to ensure that you can live comfortably and raise your family and also live a comfortable life. And that is where I leave my bit for tonight.
Great to have you, Joshua. Thanks.
No problem, sir. God bless you too. Good night, everyone.
All right. Let's go to connecting. Connecting?
Yes, sir.
Connecting. There are those who would say, yeah, you guys, there's no election in the air. Come off of the politics. Let go this argument. You're talking about 3-4 years from now. How would you respond?
Well, I would tell them to go to tell the comrades that because they are out there pushing their agenda. But we have to keep it. We have to keep the debate current. We have to be relevant. We have to continue to educate and enlighten and empower the people.
Yeah.
So
isn't this a new part of our culture, though? Because in the United States, when you listen to CNN, Fox, MSNBC, and others, they are election politics talk shows, a lot of podcasts and so forth. Jamaica is just getting used to a year-on-year, wall-to-wall coverage of the politics, not true?
Well,
but social media.
Yes, I agree with you. I agree with you, neighbor. And our people need political education.
Yes.
I think there's an area of lack.
Yes.
Where the people are not aware of and that is why we have this confusion now, where people, even educated persons, are saying that the PNP and the JP are the same. So we have a responsibility and a duty to, on a continuous basis, share factual information, educate the people, and bring them in line with what the politics is all about, and the importance of the politics. Because some people don't think the politics is important, you know.
Yeah. And isn't it true that there was a time when Jamaicans were turned off from politics because of how poor government was? I mean, all we got was year-on-year taxes after taxes, and the country was run down, and so people began to be turned off from it. People are being won back now. You don't.
Yes, and I tell you something. The social media landscape here and the evolution of social media has really helped in a big way.
Yeah. It is one of the things that is changing, sir. That a lot of Jamaicans had felt that it's not my thing, man. Let me go and try and see if we can make a life, eke out a subsistence for myself. No, this system is working. People are now recognizing what the role of government is, and that government is a part of their lives.
Absolutely. Yes. And one of the things that was happening to the people, and we are just getting over that now, is when the PNP did these things, people tend to think that is both parties doing it. It's the politics. and they use a broad brush, a one brush to broad brush the two parties.
Yeah.
What we are involved in now.
Yeah, I see no path. I see no path for the PNP right now, sir. The democracy is concerned. They are the opposition, and His Majesty's opposition. We respect them for that. But in terms of Jamaica's path going forward, sir, it really seems as if they don't fit into the futuristic narrative, the aspirational narrative of many Jamaicans. Their plans don't fit in at all.
Yes. I tell you this, neighbor, Dr. Andrew Michael Holness is to the politics now as Michael Jackson was to the music in that time gone by. He's a political rock star. Take that from me.
He's a rock star. Well,
yes.
We'll catch up with you tomorrow. Take care of yourself.
Yes, man. All the best. Thank you for having me.
And Lavi.
I'm here.
Yeah, man. Lavi, as we bring the curtains down, is it not true that the Jamaican people are viewing the politics now in a more positive light because of the performance of the government? Is that not an amazing source of cultural reality that we should pay attention to?
It is really a sobering thing. And sometimes I'm wondering if I'm in reality. When I see the transformation of the electorate of Jamaica, and as I said, I attribute the political astuteness that is emerging from the voters themselves. Because over the years, they have been led to believe that politicians enter politics for their own purposes. And here we are, living in Jamaica now, where there's never been a time when Jamaicans have been this hopeful. Never. Never in our history has Jamaicans been more hopeful. And to me, I don't know if those of us Jamaicans who are experiencing this are understanding what we are experiencing in the context of our history. And in many years to come, those of us who have lived it and have seen it are gonna be in a very privileged position to tell our children and grandchildren about the history of our country. For a young democracy to be at this we've had, it has to really be, we have to really be grateful for the crop of people that make up this government and the type of leadership that the head of the government has been provided. And I am so optimistic about my country. And when I hear even the Prime Minister himself saying that the number of Jamaicans applying for the Jamaican passports in the diaspora has increased over 100%. That tells you something, neighbor, because Jamaicans who left Jamaica, when I say left Jamaica, not there, they didn't run left Jamaica. They leave Jamaica because the dreams and aspirations that they have could not have been realized in the reality that we were living in. And for them to be applying for their passports to be able to go back to their country. And I'm sure that probably 50% of the people who are applying for the passport are Jamaicans who were born outside of Jamaica.
Yeah, this is a largely diaspora program, Harry. I'm sure that the majority of my listeners are out of the diaspora. Definitely, the majority of persons who support this program. What role do you think they play? I mean, they don't come down here in droves and vote, but what role do you think the diaspora will have to play in ensuring that this structural stability, fiscal prudence trajectory continues for at least another 10 years? I say 10 more years. What role do you think the diaspora can play in this regard?
the diaspora have to get involved. And when I say get involved, they hinted on board the journey to actualize our potential. And this includes the diaspora.
Yes.
The diaspora has to be involved more than it has ever been, because if nobody else see the importance of the transformation of Jamaica, if nobody else sees it, it must be those in the diaspora who are aware of what they left and what it has become. And as a result of that, they have so much at stake in that, because who wouldn't want to return to their island home to retire?
Fantastic.
Who wouldn't want to be able to say, because you know what, that given what we see Uncle Sam does, we should not feel safe to believe that even if we are citizens in countries outside of Jamaica, and therefore we must invest our time and our energy in helping the government and the people of Jamaica on this journey. This is
Which they do a lot. It is not enough. They have to hold, they have to take some position. And
yes.
The people who they are sending the money to accountable to, they need to direct
Yes.
to a particular
Of
board.
course.
You cannot just
Of course.
funding people and then when the election come, they don't get upon vote.
Look, Cuba, because they want their country. Look at the fire that they're putting under the foot of the government of the United States to topple the government in Cuba.
Yes.
Because they want to go back and send to our people who live outside Jamaica. We cannot choose to behind our backs. Wherever in Jamaica we are from, even if we don't plan to go back to that exact occupier spot that is offering the best of Jamaica in the context of that place. And I'm saying that the best way to preserve that is to protect and support. We have never had a government that has been more result-oriented than this one. If you can agree that this government has cut crime by 50%, if you can agree that we have reduced efficient in dealing with crisis, if you can agree on those things, if you can agree on the ability of Jamaica to recover from shocks, whether in a way, you should not be agreeing that you should put your heart, your money, and your energy in supporting the vision laid out by them. Full stop.
Great way to end, Labi. Thank you. Take care of yourself.
Take care. All the best, guys.
I know that you listen to this program. This is a great way to support your government through this program.
Yeah, this is your program, the Hello Neighbor podcast, broadcast live to the diaspora. And I know that a lot of you have invested and have supported, but we need more of you to pick up the pace. Yeah, I think it is important. This is structural stability, fiscal responsibility. Let's keep the path going, man. Let's keep the path going. Can I share something with you as I close? there was a time during the last administration, second term, that I was quite worried, worried that somehow it looked as if Jamaica was going to give up the gains we have made. Harry? 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 Are you hearing me, Harry? Are you hearing me? Are you hearing me, Harry? Harry, are you hearing me? All right. Tonight, what's clear is that Jamaica stands at a crossroads, a structural turn that requires vigilance, participation, and vision. The challenge isn't just leadership, it's ensuring that the systems that we are building can outlast any one person or crisis. So I leave you with this question. Are we ready to hold the line? Or are we going to risk going back? Yes? And that is the mission that I think we should be on as Jamaicans, to continue the path that we are on. Join me again tomorrow, 6 o'clock, on the Hello Neighbor page. The Hello Neighbor page will be on tomorrow. Until then, thank you so much for staying with us. Caroline?
Yes, neighbor. Hi. Listeners, before you go, we will be broadcasting from the Hello Neighbor page. If you haven't done so already, please follow the Hello Neighbor page. Yes, neighbor. You're welcome.
All right, listeners, take care of yourself until tomorrow. Great night, protecting Joshua, Lavi, connecting, and Harry, Caroline, Shefreen. Thank you.